series of snapshots show various people in their own worlds, but the focus shifts to Tanaka Makoto. While some might claim that marriage is the end of one's freedom, Tanaka, looking exhausted in his business suit, believes that his soul-crushing work is the real grave of life as he effortlessly slashes through monsters with his sword. Exhausted and fueled by energy drinks, Tanaka Makoto looks over his assigned targets. 5 trolls, 4 basilisks, and 3 Srank tyrant dragons. He sighs deeply, realizing that this mountain of work means hell be missing the last train home once again. Exhausted and drained, Tanaka Makoto stretches his aching body while glancing at the time. He realizes that even if he hurries, he won't be finished until midnight, leaving him to wonder when he last actually went home. With a heavy sigh, he admits how truly tired he is. The story reveals the origin of this chaotic world. 10 years ago, mysterious structures called dungeons suddenly appeared across the globe, bringing with them terrifying, unknown creatures that devastated cities. Alongside the monsters, mysterious weapons and armor forged from unknown technology were discovered, lying dormant. This drew many to become adventurers, venturing into the depths in search of treasure. But the reality is brutal. Entering a dungeon without the proper gear is nothing short of suicide. As the dungeons appeared, a divide grew between humanity. While ordinary people were easily slaughtered by the monsters, some gifted individuals awakened special powers, granting them the strength to fight back. Back in the present, Tanaka Makoto commutes on a train arriving at Shibuya, reflecting on how he became one of the awakened individuals. He's unsure if it was a blessing or a curse. Around him, ordinary people express a longing to explore dungeons. Despite the danger of not being a waker, Tanaka notices a new trend sweeping the world: the live streaming of deadly dungeon raids on a site called D2. Stepping off the train, Tanaka Makoto admits that he has never pursued anything in life other than his work. As he taps his card at the ticket gate, he wonders how streamers actually make money, feeling a sense of disconnect that makes him realize he's getting old. Makoto arrives at the Shibuya Underground Dungeons Information Center. He presents his Black Dog Company card to the staff to register his entry. Once the registration is complete, the staff member wishes him luck as he prepares to enter the dungeon. Standing before the imposing and ominous Demon's Rock, the entrance to the Shibuya Underground Dungeon, Tanaka Makoto looks on as the earth rumbles around him. With a determined gaze, he tells himself it's time to head inside. Before heading inside, Tanaka Makoto pauses. But first, he mutters, activating a spherical device with a click. The device hums to life, floating beside him as he prepares to begin his descent. The compact camera drone is a highly efficient tool that automatically uploads footage to the company. Using his smartphone, Tanaka Makoto navigates the streaming destination menu. While he notes that the device can stream to public platforms like Tube, he sticks to the familiar company server, reflecting on how he's only ever used it for submitting work reports. Suddenly, Tanaka Makoto loses his footing and crashes hard onto the ground with a loud thud. A startled guard rushes over, asking if he is all right, but Tanaka simply brushes it off, claiming it was just a momentary slip. As he bows and recovers, the guard is struck by the sheer emptiness in Tanaka's eyes, thinking to himself that the man looks absolutely dead inside. Tanaka Makoto makes his way into the dungeon, the metallic clang of his footsteps echoing through the corridor. As he walks with his drone following close behind, he is overwhelmed by a wave of exhaustion, recalling that he has only slept 2 hours today and hasn't been home in 2 weeks. Standing at the mouth of a cavern, he stares into the depths, wondering in despair what he is even doing here. As he continues his descent, Tanaka reflects on his employer, Black Dog Corp. While working as a government subcontractor might sound fancy, the reality is that they are stuck with the most annoying and dangerous job, the kind the government refuses to deal with. From Srank subjugations to gathering high-level materials, there is always a mountain of grueling work waiting for him. Tanaka Makoto stares into the dark abyss of the dungeon, fully aware that his grueling schedule is killing him. Yet he is so overwhelmed by work that quitting isn't even an option. With a hollow look in his eyes and vision blurring fatigue, he gives his recording device one last check and prepares to step inside. A wide shot reveals the massive scale of the Shibuya Underground Dungeon, a gaping void in the center of the city. With his recording drone floating beside him, Tanaka Makoto adjusts his suit and steels himself. Despite his exhausted expression, he prepares to head into the depths, telling himself it's time to get to work. Tanaka Makoto steps into the depths of the cavern, accompanied by his camera drone. With a look of utter exhaustion on his face, he recalls that at the time, he had no idea that this specific dungeon dive would turn his whole life upside down. As Tanaka Makoto descends, the perspective shifts to a live stream chat. A few viewers stumble upon the broadcast, confused by the title for company records and realizing that Tanaka is completely unaware he is live. They watch in disbelief as he slides down a steep slope and hits the ground with a heavy thud, commenting on the danger of exploring the Shibuya dungeon solo and mocking the small number of viewers watching his apparent suicide mission. Unaware that he is being watched, Tanaka Makoto brushes himself off, complaining about being covered in dust and rushing to finish his task. Meanwhile, the small group of viewers analyzes the Black Dog official channel, noticing that Tanaka isn't even on the official member list. Their attention shifts to the stream's description, where a staggering daily quota is listed. 5 trolls, 4 basilisks, and 3 Srank tyrant dragons. The viewers are incredulous, laughing off the impossible workload as a typo or a sign that the guild is a notorious black company. Intrigued by the absurdity, one viewer decides to share the stream on a forum. Tanaka Makoto leaps and dashes through the rocky environment of the Shibuya dungeon with effortless agility. As he moves, a viewer watching the stream starts to feel a sense of familiarity, wondering where they have seen him before. Tanaka notes that dungeons are structured into upper, middle, lower, and deep levels. And as he comes to a sudden stop, he prepares to enter the specific area he is targeting. Tanaka Makoto finally arrives at the deepest part of the dungeon, the deep level. Looking out over the vast, desolate landscape, he acknowledges that he has finally made it. He reflects that while most hunters would carefully work their way down level by level, he simply doesn't have the time for such caution, sighing in deep exhaustion. Tanaka Makoto laments how much of a drag his current situation is. As he stands on the rugged terrain of the deep level, he can't help but wish he could go home for some proper rest and a nice hot meal. Despite his fatigue, he remains silent and focused, ready to proceed with his mission. Tanaka Makoto checks the recording device, noting that while it's working, his boss likely won't care for a travel montage. As he prepares for the dive, he can't help but dwell on his miserable life, the meager pay, the constant lack of sleep, and the endless cycle of dangerous jobs he is forced to endure. The viewers are shocked by the working conditions Tanaka Makoto describes, accusing the Black Dog Guild of blatantly violating labor standards. Some viewers immediately start clipping the stream, intending to spread the word about the guild's exploitation. Meanwhile, the stream begins to gain traction, with the viewer count climbing from 3 to 20 as more people tune in. Tanaka Makoto notices his phone vibrating wildly. Since he isn't on social media and only has work contacts and a few old friends, he assumes the notifications are from his boss. Resigned to his miserable situation, he decides to ignore the calls, knowing that answering now would only lead to more yelling, and he'll likely be chewed out tomorrow regardless. Having put his workplace distractions aside, Tanaka Makoto prepares himself for the task at hand. With a sudden leap, he dives straight toward the deep level. The Shibuya underground dungeon is designed with a massive central atrium that connects the upper, middle, and lower levels, leading all the way down to the depths where he is now heading. With a decisive leap, Tanaka Makoto dives into the abyss. By jumping straight down the massive central hole, he can bypass the gradual descent and reach the deep level in an instant. Tanaka Makoto plummets through the air, noting that while most adventurers would avoid such a dangerous move, his crushing workload leaves him with no other choice. As he falls, the stream's chat explodes with panic, with viewers questioning if this has turned into a suicide stream. Unbothered by the chaos, Tanaka simply looks on with a confused expression. As he falls, Makoto is interrupted by his phone, buzzing yet again. Exhausted and cynical, he assumes the notifications are just more meaningless demands from work and decides to simply ignore them as he continues his descent. While plummeting, Tanaka Makoto notices the recording drone still keeping pace with him. He admits he is still uncomfortable being filmed, but accepts it as a company rule. Unaware that he is actually broadcasting live to thousands, he shudders at the thought of how embarrassed he would be if this were a real live stream. As he continues to fall, Tanaka Makoto finds himself admiring streamers, wondering if he would even get any comments if he ever tried streaming himself. He remains blissfully unaware that he is already live, with the broadcast titled Shibuya Dungeon Accidental Livestream Mid-Fall. The chat is exploding with reactions, as viewers are shocked by his descent and amused by the fact that he's still looking at the camera while falling toward his apparent doom. Approaching the end of his plummet, Tanaka Makoto remains remarkably composed. With a simple "oh," he realizes he is almost there and tells himself to get ready to land, just as the ground below begins to rumble in anticipation of his arrival. Just as Tanaka Makoto prepares for his landing, a gargantuan winged monster suddenly emerges from the darkness above, swooping down toward him with a powerful flap of its wings. The winged monster lets out a powerful earth-shaking roar, swooping in with terrifying force to intercept Tanaka Makoto during his descent. The viewers are in a panic, identifying the beast as a powerful red wyvern that even rank adventurers struggle against. They believe Tanaka Makoto's death is inevitable, with some even commenting on the rarity of an on-stream death. Meanwhile, Tanaka looks at the monster with complete indifference, wondering if the creature from the lower levels simply mistakes him for prey. With a swift movement, Tanaka Makoto avoids the red wyvern's jaws, which snap shut with a loud clack. The monster lets out a thunderous roar, but Tanaka remains completely composed, continuing to fall through the air with an expression of utter indifference. With a cold and indifferent hemph, Tanaka Makoto strikes back in a blur of speed. His blade cuts through the air with a sharp ging, delivering a precise and devastating slash across the red wyvern's neck. A massive eruption of blood bursts from the red wyvern's neck, the result of the devastating strike. Amidst the spray of gore, Tanaka Makoto looks on with a calm, indifferent expression. After effortlessly cutting down the red wyvern, Tanaka Makoto finally reaches the bottom, landing with a heavy thud on the cavern floor. With a thunderous boom, Tanaka Makoto hits the ground, the sheer force of his landing causing the rocky floor of the atrium to explode in a shower of debris. The ground continues to rumble as the debris settles around the massive crater. Tanaka Makoto lets out a tired sigh, nonchalantly adjusting his tie. "Phew, that should do it," he mutters, completely unfazed by the chaos and the dead monster lying behind him. While Tanaka Makoto privately complains that his legs are numb from the impact, the internet is exploding. Viewers are baffled, wondering if he moved too fast for the camera to track, as the red wyvern was sliced in half in an instant. Unbothered by the chaos, Tanaka simply thinks it's no big deal. The stream's popularity skyrockets, quickly hitting 50,000 viewers as the footage of the battle spreads across social media. Amidst the digital frenzy, Tanaka Makoto is left plagued by his buzzing phone, wondering just how many times people are going to call him. Just as the chaos of his sudden fame reaches a fever pitch, a new threat emerges from the depths. A massive horde of monsters, led by a towering dragon and muscular ogres, appears before Tanaka Makoto. Despite the overwhelming odds, he looks on with a bored expression, noting that they've shown up already. For him, things are finally getting interesting. This is the deep level of the dungeon, a dangerous zone teeming with deadly monsters. Despite the overwhelming presence of the beasts surrounding him, Tanaka Makoto remains calm and confident, unfazed by the peril. A series of menacing figures loom over Tanaka Makoto. From the hulking minotaur and troll to the lethal basilisk and the imposing death knight, he recognizes that every single one of them is a serious threat. And finally, the tyrant dragon. As the massive beast rumbles before him, Tanaka Makoto admits that this one is particularly tough, and he would rather not take it on. However, since it is part of his work quota, he realizes he has no choice but to face it. With a resigned yet determined look, Tanaka Makoto draws his blade from its scabbard. He readies himself for the battle ahead, deciding to get the job done. With a sudden burst of speed, Tanaka Makoto charges into the fray. The massive ogres roar and stomp forward, attempting to overwhelm him with their sheer size, but he maneuvers through them with effortless precision. Tanaka reflects on the muscular and frightening nature of trolls, remembering how difficult they were to fight the first time. However, that is no longer the case. With a sharp hup, he delivers a devastating slash, cutting through the monsters in an instant. The trolls are left in shock as their heads are cleanly sliced off in an instant. Walking away with complete indifference, Tanaka Makoto reflects that although trolls are typically hard to take down, they are actually quite weak for D-Ep level monsters, since they possess no special abilities. As the stream continues, the chat erupts in disbelief. Viewers are stunned that Tanaka Makoto could own-a-shot or rank monsters so easily, with some claiming the video must be edited, because such power seems impossible. Others are amazed that the Black Dog Guild possesses such an overwhelmingly powerful adventurer. As the clip begins to spread rapidly on social media, Tanaka Makoto sighs with a look of pure exhaustion in his eyes. Even in the middle of a dungeon, he is plagued by non-stop phone calls, leaving him frustrated as he wonders if his employers even realize he is currently working. The ground rumbles as a colossal amphibian monster suddenly looms over Tanaka Makoto. Caught off guard, Tanaka stares up at the behemoth, feeling the weight of its intense predatory glare. The stream chat erupts as viewers identify the gargantuan creature as a rare basilisk, a monster exclusive to the deep levels. While some viewers express relief that they aren't adventurers facing such a beast, others panic, warning that the monster is about to unleash its petrifying breath, leaving Tanaka Makoto in immediate peril. The stream has exploded in popularity, with 5 million people now watching the battle live. Facing the gargantuan basilisk, the stakes couldn't be higher if the creature's breath has the power to turn any living thing into stone, meaning an immediate game over if Tanaka Makoto fails to dodge. The basilisk hums with power, preparing its devastating attack. Tanaka Makoto knows that without a party to support or heal him, a single mistake would be fatal. With a determined gaze, he resolves to strike first and end the battle before the monster can unleash its deadly breath. With a sudden burst of speed, Tanaka Makoto leaps into the air and drives his sword deep into the basilisk. "There!" he exclaims as the monster lets out a pained roar, caught completely off guard by the precision of the attack. a thunderous explosion erupts as the basilisk is completely defeated. Tanaka Makoto stands calmly amidst the wreckage, his expression remaining exhausted and de-dyed, as he begins to share a secret that most people are unaware of. Tanaka Makoto calmly explains the basilisk's weak point, warning that any slight miss would result in being petrified. The chat erupts in disbelief, with viewers questioning his identity and wondering how many such monsters he has defeated. As the stream spreads internationally, the viewership surges past 13 million, with people from around the world tuning in to witness the appearance of a real samurai in Japan. As the dust settles from the fight, Tanaka Makoto realizes his phone has been vibrating non-stop, even during the heat of the battle. Annoyed by the persistence, he decides to simply ignore the notifications, certain that answering would only result in more nagging. The silence is broken as a towering presence emerges. Tanaka Makoto stares up at the colossal beast, recognizing the overwhelming power radiating from it. This is the Tyrant Dragon, a monster of strength caliber. The Tyrant Dragon looms with an overwhelming presence. Far tougher and stronger than a troll, this beast possesses a scorching breath that can melt iron, making it a truly formidable opponent. As Tanaka Makoto stands before the colossal Tyrant Dragon, the livestream chat erupts in chaos. Terrified viewers are convinced that the mysterious swordsman is toast, claiming that even an rank party would struggle against such a beast. Amidst the panic and the calls for him to run away, the stream's popularity explodes, reaching a staggering 50 million live viewers. The Tyrant Dragon lets out a deafening roar, the sheer force of which causes the ground to rumble violently. Facing the overwhelming power of the beast, Tanaka Makoto remains unfazed, staring down the massive creature. Tanaka Makoto remains calm but cautious, recognizing that the firepower of the dragon's breath is absolutely insane. Knowing that a single direct hit would leave him completely incinerated, he tightens his grip on his blade and drops into a low stance, preparing to dodge and strike. The livestream chat erupts in terror, with viewers screaming for Tanaka Makoto to get out of there, convinced he is about to be killed. However, a few observant viewers notice his specialized stance, recognizing it as a quick-draw slash. With a sudden explosive burst of speed, Tanaka launches himself forward, initiating a daring attack against the colossal Tyrant Dragon. With blinding speed, Tanaka Makoto's blade strikes true. A massive spiraling wave of energy erupts upon impact, slamming into the Tyrant Dragon and ripping through its formidable armor with overwhelming power. With a decisive motion, Tanaka completes his quick-draw slash. A colossal shockwave erupts from the point of impact, tearing through the air and ground with overwhelming force. The impact erupts into a colossal, spiraling shockwave of pure power, tearing through the environment, and leaving nothing but destruction in its wake. A sharp, decisive cut tears through the Tyrant Dragon's massive frame. The once-macing beast is rendered helpless, its wide eye reflecting the suddenness of its total defeat. With a swift and precise motion, Tanaka Makoto sheathes his blade. Behind him, the colossal Tyrant Dragon finally splits in two, its massive form tearing apart as the full force of the lethal strike takes effect. As the dust settles, the livestream chat explodes with disbelief and excitement. Viewers are stunned that a mere office worker could take down a Tyrant Dragon in a single strike, with some jokingly calling him a corporate drone swordmaster. Amidst the digital chaos and overwhelming praise, Tanaka Makoto simply thinks to himself that he is tired. Tanaka Makoto lets out a tired groan, the sheer exhaustion of his ordeal finally weighing on him. In a sudden jolt of memory, images of his previous struggles fall back, reminding him of the brutal encounters with the Minotaur and the Death Knight. Looking at the massive carcass of the Tyrant Dragon, Tanaka Makoto concludes that the beast was the leader of the pack. With their boss gone, the remaining monsters including the Minotaur and Death Knight paralyzed with fear, trembling uncontrollably. Uninterested in further slaughter, Tanaka decides to leave them alone, knowing that any drops he earns would only be stolen by his exploitative company. With a sharp clack, Tanaka Makoto sheathes his blade, deciding that he has done enough for one day. Looking exhausted and indifferent, he tells the trembling monsters to leave, letting them off the hook. The terrified monsters scramble away, as Tanaka Makoto looks over the massive devastation he caused. Relieved that the fight ended quickly, he prepares to gather the loot required for his corporate quota. However, before heading back, he decides to check his phone, though he admits to himself that he isn't particularly eager to do so. Tanaka Makoto pulls out his phone to check for updates. As he taps the screen, he is met with an overwhelming sight. 9,999 unread notifications, a direct result of his viral battle. Tanaka Makoto is completely blindsided by the 9,999 notifications on his screen. Although he knew his phone had been buzzing non-stop, the sheer volume is simply ridiculous to him. He quickly swipes to unlock the device, his expression shifting to one of pure panic as he wonders what on earth has happened. Confused, Tanaka Makoto notices that all the notifications are coming from Doob. As he opens the app, he is horrified to see a flood of comments on his video, leaving him completely bewildered by the sudden and massive attention. Completely confused, Tanaka Makoto struggles to understand why his video is receiving so many comments. He recalls being certain that he had restricted the stream to only his company. But as he checks his phone, he is horrified to find that the visibility was actually set to public. Tanaka Makoto is completely shell-shocked, his mind reeling from the realization that his settings were wrong. He stares in horror, realizing that every single action he took in the dungeon was broadcast live across the entire country. In a state of denial, he clings to the desperate hope that perhaps not many people were actually watching his stream. As he looks closer at the screen, Tanaka Makoto begins to count the digits in disbelief. His heart sinks as the number climbs higher and higher, until he realizes the unthinkable. Over 100 million people have witnessed his battle live. Tanaka Makoto collapses to his knees, completely stunned. He tries to make sense of the numbers, knowing the company account he used only has about 2,000 subscribers. He reflects on how even the most famous streamers rarely hit 1 million live viewers. Yet his own stream has reached a completely different level, 100 million. Stunned and speechless, Tanaka Makoto watches as the chat explodes. He has instantly become a global sensation, with viewers praising his overwhelming power, questioning his identity, and even begging him to join their guilds. As the chat continues to scroll endlessly on his screen, Tanaka Makoto gazes at the colossal carcass of the tyrant dragon and the ruined landscape. Instead of feeling triumphant, he sighs, realizing that his company will undoubtedly force him to file a tedious incident report for the chaos. The day after the streaming incident, the scene shifts to the exterior of a building labeled Black Dog. Inside his home, Tanaka Makoto is curled up on his sofa, hiding under a blanket. Trembling with anxiety, he checks his phone and is overwhelmed to find that everyone is still talking about his sudden fame. Tanaka Makoto scrolls through his phone, only to find himself as the top headline on Yahoo News. From his victory over the Tyrant Dragon to the staggering viewer count, his every move is being analyzed. Even on social media, the clip of his fight has garnered millions of views and reposts, with people calling him overpowered and questioning why he was hidden for so long. Tanaka continues to browse the social media feed, seeing a viral clip of his fight that has amassed nearly 10 million views. The comments are a chaotic mix. Some are in awe of his power and want to recruit him to their guilds. Others criticize the Black Dog Guild for hiding such a talent, and a few skeptics dismiss the entire thing as a fake. Tanaka Makoto collapses on his couch, letting his phone slip from his hand in sheer disbelief. He wonders if this is what it truly means to go viral, feeling completely lost since his life has always been consumed by endless work. While he questions why his solo raid was such a big deal, he admits that he is completely unfamiliar with internet culture and desperately needs someone savvy to help him navigate his new reality. Reflecting on his past, Tanaka Makoto recalls starting his journey shortly after dungeons first appeared in the world. Because he has spent so much time venturing solo, he admits he has no real gauge for the strength of other adventurers. While he was always aware of his own power, the sudden explosion of his popularity is something he never could have imagined. Looking at himself, Tanaka Makoto notes his suit and the heavy dark circles under his eyes. Admitting that he looks more like a dull corporate drone than a professional adventurer, he realizes that this gap the hidden depths of a powerful warrior hiding behind the facade of an overworked employee. It's exactly why the internet is going crazy over him. Just as Tanaka Makoto is contemplating his sudden popularity, his phone erupts with a barrage of notifications. The sudden, intense vibration shocks him so much that he jumps back in a panic, nearly knocking things over in his surprise. Flustered and confused, Tanaka Makoto wonders why he is still receiving notifications after disconnecting from Doobie. Just as he tries to make sense of the situation, his phone vibrates again, showing an incoming call from Adachi. Looking at the screen, Tanaka Makoto recalls that Adachi is one of the few friends he has, though they haven't spoken in years. He suspects the call is related to the chaos of the previous day. While he isn't eager to discuss it, he admits that Adachi is the only person he can truly confide in. With a weary expression, he slides to answer and speaks into the phone. "Hello?" The moment Tanaka answers, Adachi screams his name with overwhelming energy. Laughing hysterically, Adachi tells him that he saw the video and found it absolutely hilarious, eagerly asking how Tanaka is feeling. Unfazed and clearly not in the mood for the noise, Tanaka bluntly tells him he is hanging up and cuts the call, leaving a confused Adachi on the other end. After cutting off Adachi, Tanaka Makoto stretches his tired limbs, deciding it's time to get ready for work. He sets his phone face down on the table, but it immediately starts vibrating violently with more notifications. Slumping in defeat with a heavy sigh, he is suddenly interrupted by a voice asking, "What is it?" through his earpiece. Adachi quickly apologizes and begs Tanaka Makoto not to hang up, promising to stop teasing him. Though exhausted by Adachi's casual attitude, Tanaka gives in, admitting to himself that he actually needs his friend's advice right now. Tanaka reflects on Adachi's sociable personality and wide network of connections, believing that Adachi's expertise in social media is exactly what he needs right now. During their call, Adachi remarks on how ridiculously strong Tanaka appeared in the video, noting that he seems even stronger than before. Cutting through the flattery, Tanaka desperately asks for a solution to his current predicament. Adachi considers the request, but first asks Tanaka a pivotal question. What does he actually want to do? Tanaka Makoto tells Adachi that he simply wants all the viral videos taken down. Adachi bursts into laughter, telling him it's a fat chance. As Adachi swipes through his phone, he reveals that hundreds of highlight clips of Tanaka steamrolling monsters have already gone viral overseas. He notes that the videos have been translated into 5 languages, with people worldwide claiming that a real samurai has appeared in Japan. Tanaka Makoto is completely overwhelmed, realizing that his viral fame has spiraled far beyond his control. He reluctantly gives up on the idea of removing the videos and pleads with Adachi to help him make the situation blow over quietly. However, Adachi is baffled by Tanaka's reaction, questioning why he would want to throw away a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for fame, while Tanaka desperately screams that he is just an ordinary office worker who doesn't want any of this. The sheer stress of the situation becomes physically overwhelming for Tanaka Makoto, causing his stomach to sting despite his superhuman durability. Hearing Tanaka's desperation, Adachi remarks on how deeply the corporate drone mentality has been burned into him. Then, Adachi drops a bombshell suggestion, asking Tanaka why he doesn't just quit his job, leaving Tanaka completely stunned. Adachi points out Tanaka's severe eye bags in the viral video, guessing that Suda is still exploiting him for low pay. Tanaka can't deny it, revealing that Suda is indeed the boss of the company he works for. As he thinks of Suda, a memory surfaces of him, Adachi, and Suda playing together as children, revealing that the 3 of them have been close friends since grade school. Tanaka Makoto expresses his reluctance to quit, feeling a deep sense of obligation towards Suda. Adachi quickly reminds him that the debt from when his parent was sick has already been settled and worked off. He urges Tanaka to stop living for others and finally start living for himself, a realization that leaves Tanaka completely stunned. Tanaka Makoto looks on thoughtfully, admitting that he has been so busy that the idea of living for himself never even crossed his mind. On the other end of the line, Adachi predicts that Suda probably used fear manipulation to keep him from quitting. Tanaka agrees with a quiet sigh, and as he looks at his own hand, he begins to wonder if he truly can start living for himself. Adachi scoffs at Suda's behavior, urging Tanaka not to take the boss' cruel words to heart. He reminds Tanaka that many other guilds would be eager to have him and suggests that he could even go freelance to avoid being tied to a company. Despite the encouragement, Tanaka remains skeptical, worrying that he isn't qualified to make a living on his own. A visual breakdown reveals the harsh reality of the dungeon economy. Loot cannot be sold directly for cash, but must first be converted into gold coins. To then exchange those coins for actual money, a special license is required to companies. Slumped on his couch and looking defeated, Tanaka Makoto realizes that this system effectively traps private individuals, making it nearly impossible to survive without being tied to a corporate entity. The narrative illustrates the global scale of the dungeon economy, showing that the restrictive licensing system is implemented worldwide to prevent economic collapse. Adachi, still on the phone, clarifies his advice to Tanaka Makoto. He isn't suggesting he go freelance as a traditional adventurer, but rather that he should become a dungeon streamer. Adachi confirms the idea, explaining that dungeon streamers make a living by broadcasting their adventures, which allows them to bypass the need for a restrictive corporate license. While Tanaka Makoto recognizes that popular streamers earn a fortune, he remains skeptical, wondering if he is even capable of doing something like that. Adachi passionately declares that he will provide all the support he can if Tanaka Makoto decides to take the plunge into streaming. As he listens, Tanaka thinks about how Adachi, despite his laid-back nature, has always been someone he could rely on. He acknowledges that Adachi's job at a company supporting adventurers gives him a deep and trustworthy understanding of how dungeon streaming works. Feeling reassured by Adachi's reliability, Tanaka tells him that he is counting on his help. Adachi responds with a cheerful no problem, leaving Tanaka in a state of deep reflection. As the conversation ends, the reality of the situation sets in, and Tanaka wonders if he truly has the resolve to quit his job and change his life. Tanaka Makoto is plagued by doubt, feeling that the word unemployed carries a heavy weight at his age. However, his internal struggle is interrupted by a coworker who suddenly opens up, admitting that he has always looked up to Tanaka and once dreamed of becoming an adventurer himself. Adachi shows Tanaka a recording of his fight on a tablet, explaining that while he once dreamed of venturing into dungeons and doing great things, seeing Tanaka's overwhelming power changed his perspective. He admits that he chose a career supporting adventurers specifically so that he could one day support someone as amazing as Tanaka. Tanaka can only stare in disbelief, overwhelmed by Adachi's unexpected devotion. Adachi teases Tanaka for his lack of awareness, calling him clueless. He then jokingly suggests that if Tanaka is struggling at his job, he should just quit and come work for him even, suggesting a role as a tea server. To his own surprise, the overworked Tanaka finds the idea oddly appealing, leading Adachi to conclude that he has truly a lost cause. Adachi gives Tanaka one last boost of confidence, reminding him that his strength far exceeds that of a tyrant dragon, and urging him not to let Suda get the best of him. With a small smile, Tanaka agrees and ends the call. He walks back into the office, passing under a sign that marks the oppressive atmosphere of his workplace. As he's back into his chair, his watch reads 7:58 am, just moments before the grueling corporate grind begins again. The sound of footsteps echoes through the office. Suda approaches with a look of irritation, gritting his teeth in anger. With a loud bam, he slams his hand down on the desk, confronting Tanaka Makoto, who looks on with a tired and indifferent expression. Suda storms into the office, shouting Tanaka's name to get his attention. With a manic grin on his face and a threatening aura, he tells Tanaka to prepare himself, signaling that something unpleasant is about to happen. Suda looms over Tanaka Makoto, his face distorted with anger as he screams, demanding to know if Tanaka realizes what has done. Despite the aggressive outburst, Tanaka looks on with a cold, indifferent expression, thinking to himself that he could finish Suda off in less than a second. Despite his combat prowess, Tanaka Makoto feels a physical ache in his stomach just from hearing Suda's voice, realizing he is more emotionally worn out than he had imagined. He takes a deep breath, acknowledging that his recent talk with Adachi has allowed him to look at his situation objectively without that support. He might have given up on everything by now. As he steadies himself, Suda continues his aggressive confrontation, bringing up the matter of Tanaka's livestream. Suda erupts in a fit of fury, shouting that the company's name has been dragged through the mud and holding Tanaka Makoto responsible for the entire mess. He menacingly warns Tanaka that once the other employees arrive, he is going to rip him to shreds. Suda grabs Tanaka Makoto by the collar, laughing maniacally as he warns him to brace himself. Unfazed by the aggression, Tanaka simply sighs internally, noting that Suda's management skills are as pathetic as ever. Suda continues his aggressive outburst, screaming at his staff. Tanaka Makoto watches, noting that Suda's only real talent is running an exploitative company that has left him physically and emotionally wrecked. As Suda threatens Aki with pay cuts, Tanaka acknowledges a past favor he owes, but his gaze turns sharp and determined. He decides that from now on, he will live for himself, and to do that, he must finally fight back. Suda screams at his subordinates, claiming that showing up later than the boss is unacceptable, and that his harsh words are for their own benefit. While the other employees tremble in fear, Tanaka Makoto remains cold and indifferent, recognizing that Suda is simply lying to enjoy the feeling of superiority. Suda ends his tirade by dismissively calling them all a bunch of failures. Suda lets out a dramatic sigh, complaining about how tough it is to be the boss. Tanaka Makoto watches him with disgust, knowing Suda only targets those who cannot defend themselves. Clenching his fist, Tanaka feels glad that he has finally come to his senses, even as Suda's presence makes him feel physically ill. He questions if he can hold his own in an argument, but his resolve is firm. Suddenly, something catches his attention. Confused by a sudden notification, Tanaka Makoto checks his phone to find messages from Adachi. Adachi bluntly reminds him that he is far more powerful than Suda, noting that he could kill the boss in an instant if he wanted to. With this reminder of his own overwhelming strength, Tanaka's hesitation vanishes, and he finally understands how to approach the situation. Tanaka Makoto puts on a facade of apology, pretending to be sick to avoid Suda's immediate wrath. Suda laughs, mocking him and refusing to let him off the hook. However, behind his submissive expression, Tanaka is coldly evaluating his boss. He acknowledges that Suda was once an adventurer, but realizes that years of inactivity have left him weak. Looking closely, Tanaka sees that Suda is completely open and vulnerable. In an instant, Tanaka Makoto discards his act of weakness. With a blur of speed, he delivers a devastating punch straight into Suda's midsection, leaving the arrogant boss frozen in absolute shock as the impact ripples through him. Tanaka Makoto stares intensely at Suda, his gaze cold and calculating. Internally, he realizes that he could finish Suda off in less than a second. While Suda grows irritated by the stare, asking what's wrong, Tanaka reflects on his past fear of losing his job. He realizes that compared to a tyrant dragon, Suda isn't scary at all. Tanaka Makoto clenches his fist, his expression filled with newfound determination. He realizes that the fear that once held him back is gone, and he no longer cares about the consequences of quitting. Nearby, Suda is in his usual element, screaming at a group of bowing employees for being late and maliciously mentioning that they will discuss their pay cuts later. Suda calls Tanaka forward, gathering the other employees to witness the confrontation. With a menacing grin and a loud shout, Suda demands that Tanaka explain himself clearly and briefly to everyone present. However, Tanaka stands his ground, looking at his boss with a gaze of total indifference. Tanaka observes the terrified expressions of his coworkers and realizes that Suda is simply using his usual routine to make employees feel guilty and intimidated. He recalls how he used to be just as scared, but now he sees Suda for what he truly is, a nasty man's. As Suda impatiently demands that he speak, Tanaka begins to respond, maintaining his facade. Tanaka Makoto claims that he simply messed up the stream settings, leading to the leak of internal company content. He pretends to be filled with regret, which only seems to amuse Suda, who reacts with a sinister, mocking laugh. Suda shouts aggressively, confirming that Tanaka has done something terrible and demanding to know how he plans to make up for it. Internally, Tanaka recognizes that Suda is attempting to break his will, just as he always has in the past. But as he looks at his boss, Tanaka realizes that those old fears are gone. Suda's manipulation no longer has any power over him. Tanaka Makoto completely flips the script, calmly informing Suda that negative rumors about the Black Dog Guild are spreading online. He bluntly states that the fallout is entirely Suda's problem, leaving the boss speechless and shocked by his employees' newfound audacity. Suda completely loses his composure, his face contorted in fury. "You've got nothing to do with it? Who on earth do you think you are?" he bellows. In a violent outburst, Suda kicks a desk across the room with a loud crash, daring Tanaka to repeat his words. While Aki and the other employees tremble in fear at the display of temper, Tanaka Makoto simply stands there, staring back with total indifference. Tanaka Makoto remains cold and composed, pointing out that the guild is an exploitative company and that Suda is the one responsible for the truth coming to light. This sends Suda into a complete meltdown. Screaming in rage, Suda argues that they are generous for paying minimum wage and providing a single day off a month, before viciously belittling Tanaka and the other employees as useless losers who would be unwanted anywhere else. Suda screams in a fit of rage, but Tanaka Makoto remains completely unfazed, thinking to himself that Suda's words are a textbook example of an exploitative boss. Tanaka then turns the tables, accusing Suda of violating the Adventure Labor Standards Act. As the other co-workers nod in silent agreement, Tanaka confronts him with a sharp gaze, asking if he really thought no one had noticed his corruption. Suda is left speechless and groaning in frustration. Suda completely ignores the accusations of labor violations, screaming that because he works for the government, he is essentially the government itself. Tanaka looks on with utter disgust, realizing that Suda is a lost cause. The Black Dog Guild is revealed to be rotten to the core, as even the other employees are repulsed by their boss' arrogance and begin considering resignation. Tanaka Makoto looks at Suda with cold indifference, deciding that he has heard enough of the man's delusions. Thinking to himself that it is time to let the cat out of the bag, Tanaka calmly mentions that they have known each other for a long time. A confused and enraged Suda is cut off, as Tanaka taps the play button on his phone, ready to reveal a devastating secret. With a sudden flash on the screen, Tanaka Makoto reveals the recording. Suda stares at his own image in shock, his face pale and sweating as he frantically asks what is going on. Suda's face contorts in absolute horror and rage as he realizes the recording is being broadcast live to the world. A barrage of chat messages from viewers floods the screen, mocking his classic exploitative boss lines and predicting his immediate bankruptcy. As the internet celebrates Tanaka's resignation speedrun, a desperate Suda can only scream in disbelief, realizing there is no way to talk his way out of this disaster. Tanaka Makoto calmly reveals the secret behind the broadcast, showing off the stealth drone he used to record Suda's corruption. While Suda spirals into a state of complete denial and despair, Tanaka notes that the Black Dog Guild's channel is exploding in popularity. With no way out, Tanaka tells Suda it's time to face the consequences of his actions. As the broadcast continues, the chat section explodes with comments. Viewers mock Suda's meltdown, with some even reporting him to the labor office, while they celebrate Tanaka Makoto as the hero of all corporate drones. Tanaka glances at his phone, noting that hundreds of thousands of people are watching the broadcast and that social media must be exploding. With a determined and stern expression, he turns to Suda and declares that it is finally over. He challenges Suda's usual tactics of threats and intimidation, pointing out that with so many witnesses, there is no way to silence the truth anymore. Suda is absolutely livid, his face contorted in rage as he struggles to find words. Tanaka Makoto watches him with a cold, detached gaze, noting that while Suda is used to ruling through fear, he is completely powerless now. As Suda trembles and utters Tanaka's name, Tanaka concludes that Suda lacks the actual cleverness to escape the situation he's in. Suda screams in a panic, demanding to know why Tanaka is doing this and if it is simply revenge for how he pushed him around. Tanaka remains unfazed, calmly admitting that while revenge did cross his mind, Suda's past behavior no longer matters. He then abruptly shifts the focus, telling Suda it is time to get to the main issue, leaving the boss completely bewildered. Tanaka firmly declares that he is leaving the company to finally live for himself. Although he hasn't made concrete plans, he considers going freelance or finding a new job. Suda initially scoffs at the idea, but quickly erupts in a fit of rage, screaming that Tanaka has completely lost his mind. Suda erupts in a fit of rage, pointing aggressively at Tanaka Makoto. He screams that Tanaka is a good-for-nothing who is completely dependent on him and would be unable to find employment anywhere else. Not stopping there, Suda turns his fury toward the other terrified employees, declaring that the same applies to all of them. Tanaka reflects on how long he endured Suda's abuse. Calmly acknowledging Suda's point about his perceived uselessness, Tanaka decides to put it to the test. To Suda's confusion and rage, Tanaka turns to the other employees and asks if any of them would be willing to hire him once he leaves the company. The moment Tanaka asks if anyone would hire him, he is overwhelmed by a barrage of offers, from the Scarlet Wolf and Obsidian Bear Guilds to the Gold Lion Guild. Promising double the salary, everyone is eager to have him. Even the Bronze Snake Guild offers to take care of that annoying garbage for him, proving that he is anything but unemployable. Tanaka Makoto stares at his phone in disbelief as it vibrates incessantly with a flood of notifications. He is stunned to discover that some of the offers are coming from top-tier guilds that are normally nearly impossible to enter. Having spent so long being undervalued, he is deeply moved by the sudden surge of interest and the kindness shown to him by so many people. Overwhelmed by the warmth and support from the guilds, Tanaka Makoto feels himself on the verge of tears. He then turns to Suda, presenting the flood of offers as definitive proof of his worth, firmly stating that Suda no longer has any power over him. Suda completely loses his cool, screaming in a blind fury. He brings up the past, reminding Tanaka that he was the one who gave him a job when he was a broke student and lent him money for his parents' medical expenses, viewing Tanaka's decision to leave as an act of betrayal. Tanaka Makoto calmly shuts down Suda's accusations, stating that he has already paid back every cent. He turns the tables, telling Suda that he is the real betrayer, and admits that he once hoped they could have achieved great things together. Suda continues to rave, but Tanaka Makoto is completely finished listening. Dismissing the noise as meaningless chatter, Tanaka calmly walks over to the small arms storage and retrieves his sword, his expression one of utter exhaustion and annoyance. Suda completely loses his composure, his face twisting into a manic grin as he screams, "You ungrateful scum, sword." Tanaka Makoto looks on with a sweat-dropped expression, bewildered by the sudden escalation, while the other employees watch in sheer horror. Suda's rage reaches a breaking point, his face twisting into a manic expression as he screams, "You ungrateful scum!" While brandishing his sword, the air rumbles with his intensity, leaving the co-workers paralyzed in fear, while Tanaka Makoto remains calm, staring back at his former boss with a cold, unwavering gaze. Tanaka Makoto realizes that the weapon Suda is wielding is a lethal tool designed specifically for dungeons, noting that using it in the office is a serious violation of the law. Completely disregarding the rules, a manic Suda screams "Go to hell" as he lunges forward to strike. Suda screams Tanaka's name as he lunges forward with the lethal blade, his face twisted in a manic expression. While the co-workers scream in terror at the sudden violence, Tanaka remains eerily calm, watching the attack approach. Suda's lethal strike reaches its mark, but Tanaka Makoto remains completely unfazed, noting that the attack is far too slow. As he effortlessly stops the blade, Tanaka reflects on how Suda has lost his touch, moving at a pace that pales in comparison to the terrifying monsters of the deep levels. In a flash, Tanaka Makoto neutralizes the attack. With a resounding thwack, Suda's weapons is sent flying across the room. Suda gasps in horror, staring down at his mangled hand as pain surges through him, leaving him screaming in desperation. Suda recoils in agony, clutching his injured hand as shock and terror wash over his face. Tanaka Makoto looks down at him with a cold, declaring that it is over. He mockingly asks if Suda is finally beginning to understand what it feels like to experience pain. Suda stares at Tanaka Makoto, trembling and demanding to know why this is happening. Without a word, Tanaka swiftly delivers a crushing blow to Suda's midsection, silencing him instantly. The impact is devastating. Suda is launched across the room, crashing violently through desks and sending papers flying everywhere. As Suda reels from the blow, coughing up blood in sheer agony, the surrounding co-workers, including Aki, can only stare in frozen terror at the overwhelming power Tanaka Makoto has just unleashed. Suda is launched with such overwhelming force that he smashes right through the office wall, obliterating a sign that proclaims boss is God. He hits the wall with a deafening thud, leaving him completely incapacitated and buried in the wreckage. Tanaka Makoto lets out a sigh of relief and adjusts his suit, feeling much better after the confrontation. Behind him, Suda lies face down and twitching on the floor. Tanaka reflects that he held back enough to keep him alive, hoping the experience teaches him a lesson. Tanaka turns to leave. His stunned coworkers, including Aki, watch him in absolute awe, barely able to whisper his name. Suda struggles to push himself up against the cracked wall, panting heavily and trembling with rage. He screams in humiliation, swearing that Tana will pay for this. Tanaka watches him calmly, recognizing Suda's resilience as a former adventurer. But he realizes that Suda is on the brink of death and another hit might actually kill him. Just as the tension peaks, a light-haired man in a suit bursts into the room, demanding to know what is happening. Tanaka Makoto simply finds the situation odd-drag. Seizing the moment, Suda screams for the employees to kill Tanaka, labeling him a criminal. However, the newcomer is infuriated by the employees' cowardice, calling them useless trash. Suda screams at the terrified employees, threatening to cut their salaries if they don't take down Tanaka Makoto. However, Theo laughs at the chaos and turns the pressure on Suda, threatening to ensure he never works in the industry again. Completely broken and terrified, Suda can only stammer in agreement as Theo asserts his absolute authority. Theo steps forward to restrain Tanaka Makoto, apologizing nervously as he prepares to hold him down. Unmoved and completely calm, Tanaka simply tells him to bring it on. Theo makes a sudden dash, diving low to grab Tanaka Makoto's leg in an attempt to pin him to the ground. Theo is confident, thinking to himself that he finally has him, but Tanaka looks down with a bored expression, acknowledging that while the technique is a good way to take down an opponent, Theo's execution is far too straightforward. With a swift movement, Tanaka Makoto dismisses Theo's attack as being far too slow. In an instant, he flips the situation, slamming Theo hard against the office floor with a resounding slap. Theo can only let out a shocked cry as he is pinned down by the overwhelming power. Theo remains pinned to the floor, completely overwhelmed by Tanaka Makoto's effortless strength. Tanaka looks down at him with a cold, bored expression, unfazed by the conflict. From the sidelines, Suda watches in disbelief and disgust, cursing Theo for being useless and deciding that a mere pay cut won't be enough punishment for such a pathetic failure. Tanaka Makoto calmly tells Suda to give up, revealing that the entire scene is being live-streamed to the world, effectively sealing the fate of Suda and the company. Suda snaps, screaming in a fit of rage that the company's success is his own doing and that he won't let Tanaka destroy it. In a desperate attempt to regain control, he bellows an order to Guda to get him. Guda steps forward with a heavy thud, towering over Tanaka Makoto. The two men stand face-to-face in a tense standoff, with Guda's imposing and muscular physique creating an intimidating presence. As they face off, Tanaka observes Guda, recalling their past dungeon ventures together. He recognizes that Guda is not like the previous opponent as an rank adventurer. He possesses real power and is a key asset to Suda. Tanaka knows that taking him down will not be as simple as it was with Suda screams for Guda to finish Tanaka off. While Tanaka prepares himself for a clash with the rank adventurer, wondering how to handle the situation, Guda does the unexpected. Instead of attacking, he places a hand on Tanaka's head and congratulates him for finally deciding to resign, leaving Tanaka completely bewildered. Guda continues to surprise everyone by praising Tanaka Makoto, telling him that he is far too talented for such a company and belongs on a much larger stage. Tanaka is left bewildered, recalling how Guda rarely spoke to him during their past missions and assuming he was disliked. Meanwhile, Theo is absolutely furious, unable to believe that Guda is openly defying orders. Theo is absolutely livid, screaming at the top of his lungs and questioning why Guda would ever suck up to a loser like Tanaka Makoto. But Guda remains unfazed, meeting Theo's rage with a chilling silent glare that speaks volumes. Guda firmly refuses to obey Suda's command, revealing that Tanaka Makoto was actually the one who taught him the basics of being an adventurer. As Suda reacts in frustration, Tanaka reflects on Guda's power, admitting that he might be taken down if Guda fought with everything he had, acknowledging the man's genuine strength. Guda bows and tells Tanaka Makoto to leave, promising to deal with the boss on his behalf. Aki is surprised but grateful, tapping Guda on the shoulder in appreciation. Meanwhile, Theo can only watch in absolute fury, trembling with rage. Tanaka Makoto reaches for the doorknob, a look of relief crossing his face as he tells himself that he is finally leaving this guild behind. However, the moment he steps outside, the door is slammed shut with a thunderous bang by Guda, cutting off the chaos of the office. Bam! The door is flung open with a crash, interrupting the chaos inside. A stern woman in a defense uniform, accompanied by two officers, marches in and commands everyone to stay where they are. They reveal their identity as members of the Audit Division of the Association Operations Bureau, stating they have arrived in response to a report. Theo bursts into manic laughter upon hearing the Audit Division has arrived. believing the situation has shifted in his favor. He screams for the officers to arrest Tanaka Makoto, falsely claiming that he was assaulted. Meanwhile, it is explained that the Association Operations Bureau is a government agency under the Ministry of Monster Defense, and the report likely came from someone watching the stream. Theo laughs maniacally, confidently ordering the officers to do their job and arrest Tanaka. However, the sound of clicking handcuffs echoes as the Audit Division officers seize Theo instead. Confused and shocked, Theo is held firmly by the officers, who tell him to stay still. Theo screams in shock and denial, desperately trying to shift the blame to someone else. However, Noah remains firm, declaring that Akihiro Suda is also under arrest for violating the Adventurer Labor Standards Act and the Waker Special Act. As Aki looks on, it becomes clear that there is no escape for Suda, as every single action and word was captured on the livestream. Theo collapses in disbelief, realizing the gravity of the situation. Theo is completely broken, unable to accept that his crimes were caught on camera, as the other employees watch with a sense of relief, noting that his era of abuse has finally ended. Theo makes one last desperate plea. He screams at Noah and the officers, demanding that Tanaka Makoto also be arrested, claiming that Tanaka attacked him, a citizen he was supposed to protect. Noah coldly shuts down Theo's attempts to frame Tanaka, reminding him that under the Waker Special Act, using powers against civilians outside of dungeons is strictly prohibited. Theo flinches in terror, realizing his claims are useless. Watching the scene unfold, Tanaka Makoto contemplates the world's change following the emergence of dungeons and the existence of those known as Wakers. Theo continues to wail desperately, claiming to be the victim, but his cries are drowned out by Tanaka Makoto's inner monologue. Tanaka reflects on how mana essence from dungeons creates Wakers and explains that because these powers can be used in the real world, the Waker's Special Act exists to strictly limit and regulate them. Theo continues to scream in desperation, demanding that the officers arrest the ungrateful scum. Tanaka Makoto, however, Noah firmly shuts him down, explaining that Tanaka's actions were a clear case of self-defense. She clarifies that while it might have been ruled as excessive if Theo weren't a Waker, the fact that both possess powers and that Theo initiated the attack with a weapon makes him the primary offender. Theo is left completely stunned by the legal reality. Aki mentions that since Suda was once an adventurer and therefore a Waker, Tanaka is completely in the clear under the Waker Special Act. Just as Tanaka begins to feel relieved, Noah interrupts, informing him that he still needs to accompany her to the office. Tanaka reluctantly agrees to accompany Noah to the office, though he finds the prospect tedious. He notices Noah staring at him intensely, leaving him wondering why she is looking at him that way. As he studies her face, a memory clicks, and he asks if she is a Matsuki. Noah lets out a long sigh, remarking that it took him long enough to notice. Aki is completely stunned as he recognizes Noah, calling her Kanada a Matsuki. He marvels at how much she has grown and is baffled as to why. The chief of the 1st Subjugation Unit is personally involved in this matter. Noah calmly explains that her unit is mandated to assist whenever the offender is a Waker. Theo shouts in frustration, questioning why a high-ranking official like Kanada Matsuki is personally involved in this matter. While Theo continues to desperately deny his wrongdoing, Tanaka muses that it is indeed strange for such an elite figure to deal with a small fry like Suda. The narrative further explains that the 1st Subjugation Unit is the elite arm of the Ministry of Monster Defense. The 1st Subjugation Unit is composed of top-tier Wakers, deployed specifically when monster outbreaks threaten the city. Beyond combat, they are also tasked with the arrest of criminal Wakers. Leading this elite force is Kanade Matsuki, the unit's chief and one of the most influential figures in the organization. Tanaka admires Kanade Matsuki, noting that her strength, intelligence, and beauty make her the finest talent in the Ministry of Monster Defense. He acknowledges her impressive achievement in becoming the chief of the 1st Subjugation Division despite her young age. As he looks at her, memories surface of their youth, when they used to venture into dungeons together and got along quite well. Standing before Kanade, Tanaka can't help but feel a sense of melancholy, wondering how their paths diverge so drastically. She has become an elite, while he remains a corporate slave. When Kanade nonchalantly claims she has no particular reason for being there, other than having some free time, Tanaka remains skeptical, questioning if there is a hidden motive behind her visit. Noah suddenly gasps and turns away, shifting instantly back into her professional mode. Tanaka is left bewildered, questioning if her cold demeanor means she hates him. Without another word to him, Noah sternly orders her subordinates to take Suda into custody, and the officers immediately obey. Suda struggles violently as the officers haul him away, shouting that he is the boss and demanding to be released. As he is dragged out of sight, he screams a final threat at Tanaka, vowing that he will one day return for revenge, while Tanaka simply watches him go with an indifferent expression. Suda continues to scream in the hallway, desperately claiming that his tax payments fund the officers' salaries as he is hauled away. Tanaka watches with a heavy sigh, reflecting on what a scumbag Suda was, and feeling relieved that the resignation mess is finally over. However, Noa steps forward, telling Makoto that she would like to hear what he has to say as well. Noa informs Tanaka that while it is voluntary, she expects him to accompany her to the office. However, Tanaka asks to postpone it, admitting that he is completely exhausted and desperately needs sleep. Before Noa can even react, Tanaka vanishes in a flash, leaving her wide-eyed and bewildered. Tanaka leaves a business card for the officers, admitting that he would have left more quietly if it weren't for Amatsuki's presence. Telling them to contact him later for an explanation, he abruptly jumps out of the window, disappearing from the scene. Tanaka Makoto leaps fearlessly from the building, plummeting through the air against the backdrop of the city's skyscrapers. Noa watches him disappear into the skyline, shouting in disbelief that she had come all this way just to see him. Falling through the air, Tanaka briefly wonders if Noa had said something to him, but he quickly dismisses it as his imagination. Back in the office, Noa stares at the business card in her hand with a melancholic expression, realizing that the days they spent diving into dungeons together are now a thing of the past. Tanaka walks through the city, finally attempting to leave his corporate nightmare behind. However, his peace is abruptly shattered when Aki rushes up to him. Shouting with excitement after witnessing Tanaka's badass performance on the stream, Aki continues to tease Tanaka about his newfound fame, calling him a celebrity, which only irritates the exhausted man. Tanaka tries to dash away to go home, but he eventually gives in, and the two end up at a cafe. Even there, Aki doesn't stop talking, leading Tanaka to call him a chatterbox, to which Aki admits he just feels more comfortable talking when Hez with him. Aki enthusiastically tells Tanaka to order whatever he wants, declaring the meal as his resignation party. Tanaka sighs, recalling how Aki had messaged him out of nowhere to get food. Although he finds it odd to have a resignation party at a family restaurant, Tanaka admits that a free meal is a huge help now that Hez jobless. Aki tells Tanaka to order whatever he wants, and Tanaka takes the invitation very seriously. He lists off a mountain of food, from jumbo burgers and steaks to curry and a pancake tower. While the waiter barely manages to process the order, Aki is left screaming in disbelief at the sheer scale of Tanaka's appetite. Tanaka calmly remarks that the food should satisfy his hunger, while Aki panics over the cost and his strict wife's allowance. Aki eventually accepts the situation, noting that Tanaka's active lifestyle as an adventurer justifies the appetite. As Aki heads to the drink bar, he observes that the dark circles under Tanaka's eyes have faded, making him look much healthier, a change that Tanaka himself begins to realize. Tanaka recalls his time as a corporate drone, noting that he truly looked like a walking corpse back then. However, looking in the mirror this morning, he realizes he's finally starting to look alive again. Returning to the present, Aki asks what Tanaka wanted to discuss while they wait for their food. With a heavy thud, Tanaka places a document on the table, explaining that he put it together during his breaks at work. Tanaka presents the document he meticulously prepared during his breaks. Titled The Road to Becoming a Popular Streamer, the file is a comprehensive guide covering everything from stream topic suggestions and account management to peak viewer hours and current trends. Aki is left speechless by the sheer amount of research Tanaka has compiled. Tanaka looks at the shocked Aki and smugly remarks that Aki probably knows nothing about streaming. With a confident smile and a drink in his hand, Tanaka boldly promises that he will make Aki a world-class streamer. Overwhelmed with emotion, Aki is moved by Adachi's kindness. Adachi then surprises him by handing over an old drone model from the Black Dog Guild, telling him to make do with it for now. Stunned by the unexpected gift, Aki can hardly believe he's been given a drone, before turning his attention back to Tanaka. Adachi asks for a moment before showing Tanaka something on his phone. He explains that since new accounts cannot stream immediately after creation, he took the liberty of setting one up for Tanaka the previous day, just to be safe. He proudly reveals the Makoto Tanaka channel, though it currently sits at 0 followers. Adachi informs Tanaka that he can begin streaming as early as tomorrow, promising to give him the ID and password later. As the waiter brings out their enormous feast, Aki is left stunned by Adachi's efficiency and competence. Overwhelmed with emotion, Tanaka looks at Adachi and tells him that he has done so much for him that he doesn't think he can ever thank him enough. Adachi brushes off Tanaka's gratitude, jokingly insisting that he wouldn't stoop so low as to mooch off someone who is currently unemployed. With a wide, supportive smile, he tells Tanaka that he is genuinely looking forward to seeing him shine and urges him to stop worrying and give his streaming career everything's got. Moved by the encouragement, Tanaka simply replies, "All right." Tanaka expresses his sincere gratitude to Adachi, promising to make the most of the support he has been given. As the three of them enjoy their meal, Adachi brings up a new topic. asking Tanaka what he thinks about joining another guild, mentioning that he noticed Tanaka getting scouted during his broadcast. Tanaka reflects on the positive experience of being cheered on by his viewers and decides to go freelance for the time being to see how far he can progress on his own. Adachi accepts his decision, and as they realize the time, Tanaka prepares to leave for the Association Operations Bureau to settle some matters. As they part ways, Adachi wonders if a certain Kanata-chan will also be there. As Tanaka makes his way, he recalls the ties between his acquaintances, noting that Amatsuki and Adachi have known each other for ages. He reflects on how Amatsuki didn't hesitate to arrest Suda. His thoughts then drift to a girl he saw on the stream, marveling at how she has grown into a beauty, and remembering how the comments were going wild over her appearance. Tanaka recalls how the viewers on the stream have started calling Amatsuki the Ice Sword Princess. He finds it hilarious that so many people were actually asking to be insulted by her, leaving him genuinely impressed by her unexpected charm. Tanaka continues to dwell on Amatsuki, admiring the woman she has become while feeling a sense of inadequacy about his own current situation. However, he realizes that if she truly despised him, she wouldn't have gone out of her way to show up. Aki chimes in, reminding Tanaka of their deep bond in the past and how they used to call each other Big Bro Mako and Kanachan. But Tanaka simply tells him it's okay. Filled with a sudden surge of determination, Tanaka reflects on his past failures, vowing to work hard so that Amatsuki will see him in a better light. His intensity leaves Aki momentarily bewildered. Quickly shifting gears, Tanaka announces his plan to review his materials and begin live streaming tomorrow. As they talk, Aki muses that Amatsuki has a rough path ahead of her, though Tanaka simply brushes the comment off. Aki gives a cheerful thumbs up, promising to tune into Tanaka's streams even while he's on the clock. Tanaka smiles back, thanking his friend for the support as they share a genuine moment of camaraderie. After saying goodbye to Aki, Tanaka makes his way to West Shinjuku Station. As he follows the signs toward the Precipice Dungeon, the sweltering heat begins to take a toll on him. Tanaka basks in the joy of his new life, realizing he no longer has to endure the misery of a strict corporate schedule or crowded commutes. Standing before the entrance of the West Shinjuku Precipice Dungeon, he feels a sense of absolute liberation. With a determined shout and a pumped fist, he prepares himself to dive into the dungeon and begin his new path. Tanaka steps into the West Shinjuku Precipice Dungeon. As the ground rumbles, he looks up at the towering cliffs and industrial structures, admitting that the scale of the place still impresses him every time he visits. The West Shinjuku Precipice Dungeon is a massive rift that has split the city apart, a place where no one has ever pushed past the middle level. Tanaka Makoto reflects on the importance of pacing for his stream, as suggested by Adachi's documents, to avoid boring his viewers. Deciding to start with the upper and middle levels first, he gets his drone ready for the broadcast. Tanaka Makoto follows through with his plan, deploying the streaming drone and linking it to his phone and Tube account. After posting the announcement on social media, he is immediately met with a notification. Surprised, Tanaka sees that Adachi has already liked and shared his post, leaving him wondering if the man is even working. The stream goes live, and the viewer count immediately spikes to 1103. Tanaka is stunned by the sudden influx of people. The chat floods with messages from eager fans calling him the corporate drone Swordmaster and divine Swordmaster, while some discuss the news that Suda has been judged guilty. Overwhelmed by the attention, Tanaka can hardly believe 1,000 people are already watching. Tanaka feels a bit nervous, realizing just how many people are tuning in to watch him. However, as he scrolls through his phone and sees a flood of messages and lucrative guild offers, he is moved to tears. He realizes that it is thanks to the support of these viewers that he was finally able to leave his soul-crushing company. With a renewed sense of determination, Tanaka prepares himself to enter the dungeon, vowing to give it his all to return the favor to those supporting him. Tanaka Makoto greets his audience, thanking them for tuning in to his very first live stream and introducing himself as a former adventurer of the Black Dog Guild. As he speaks, the chat screen explodes with messages viewers tease him for still wearing a business suit and begin calling him Corseword, a shorthand for corporate drone Swordmaster. Tanaka considers the high energies malad of popular DTubers, but decides that sticking to his business-like tone is more comfortable for him. However, he suddenly realizes he forgot to project the chat for the audience. After a moment of panic and fumbling with his phone, he successfully activates the projection, allowing him to view the comments without needing his device. He quickly offers his apologies to the viewers for the technical delay. Tanaka thanks his viewers for their comments and announces that he will be heading to the middle level of the West Shinjuku Precipice Dungeon today. Postponing the deep level for another time, he awkwardly confirms that he has eaten breakfast, feeling the pressure of responding to the rapid-fire chat. Realizing how challenging it is to be asterisk, He gathers himself and tells his audience that it's time to move toward Today's destination. Before heading further into the dungeon, Tanaka Makoto adds a final request, asking his viewers to share his stream on social media. With a slightly awkward smile, he admits that since he is currently unemployed, their support would be a huge help to him. Tanaka Makoto introduces his destination for the day, the West Shinjuku Precipice Dungeon. He explains to his viewers that the dungeon is located within a massive cliff, making the journey to the entrance quite an effort. To alleviate this, he points out a new dungeon access elevator recently installed by the Association Operations Bureau to help explorers reach the bottom more easily. Tanaka Makoto arrives at the dungeon, only to be greeted by a massive sea of people. Having visited this place several times before, he is completely baffled by the sudden surge in crowd size, wondering if some rare discovery has drawn everyone in. Amidst the commotion, he realizes he needs to quickly figure out how to proceed with his live stream. Seeing the chat fill with disappointment and accusations of fraud, Tanaka Makoto grits his teeth. He refuses to let his debut stream end in failure just because of an unexpected crowd. Tanaka Makoto is horrified to see his viewers leaving negative comments and unsubscribing in real time. He realizes that his debut stream is on the verge of tanking. Despite having studied everything Adachi taught him, he feels the current situation is completely unfair. However, he quickly shifts his mindset, resolving to get things back on track by asking around to find out why the dungeon entrance is so crowded. Despite his nervousness and the pressure of the staring drone camera, Tanaka Makoto forces himself to initiate a conversation with a stranger. He taps a light-haired man in armor on the shoulder, awkwardly asking if he has a moment to talk. Just as Tanaka Makoto attempts to ask for information, Noah recognizes him as the famous corporate drone Swordmaster from the viral videos. The realization spreads like wildfire through the crowd, with onlookers admiring his appearance and whispering in shock. Suddenly thrust into the center of attention, Tanaka is completely overwhelmed, his stomach churning from the intense pressure of everyone's gaze. The surrounding adventurers are amazed, wondering if a guild will scout Tanaka Makoto, and noting his sudden celebrity status. Noah, thrilled by the encounter, asks Tanaka if he is also exploring the Westprec dungeon today, feeling lucky to potentially dive with a celebrity. Meanwhile, a flustered Tanaka remains oblivious to the cause of the commotion, simply wondering why the entrance is so crowded. Tanaka Makoto, still feeling awkward, asks Noah why the area is so crowded. Noah realizes he got carried away by Tanaka's celebrity status and apologizes. He then explains the cause of the chaos. The elevator leading to the dungeon entrance has broken down, leaving the adventurers stranded and creating a massive crowd. Tanaka thanks Noah for the information, but his mind immediately shifts back to his struggling stream. Glancing at the chat, he sees viewers complaining about the delay and threatening to leave. He realizes that waiting for the elevator to be fixed will bore his audience, but switching dungeons might ruin the momentum of his debut. Tanaka Makoto is in a state of panic as he notices his livestream chat dying down, fearing a massive loss of subscribers. Suddenly, he remembers the documents Adachi provided, which contain tips for handling midstream crises. He quickly searches his phone for the photos he took of the documents. When he finds the specific tip for when things go wrong, it simply tells him to do what he did as a corporate drone, brute force his way through. Tanaka stares at the screen in utter disbelief, questioning the absurdity of the advice. At the reception desk, the staff is in a state of panic, confirming over the phone that 18 people are still trapped inside the dungeon with no safety confirmation. Suddenly, Tanaka Makoto interrupts the chaos, slamming his ID card onto the counter and calmly requesting to be checked in. The receptionist is left completely stunned, recognizing him immediately as the famous corporate drone Swordmaster. The receptionists are instantly starstruck, with one excitedly shouting to her colleague that the famous corporate drone Swordmaster has arrived. Tanaka, feeling overwhelmed by the attention, finds the sudden fame to be a drag. When he tries to check in, the receptionist apologetically explains that entry is currently prohibited due to the crisis. However, Tanaka remains insistent, simply wanting to complete the check-in process, leaving the bewildered receptionist with no choice but to comply. Tanaka Makoto goes through the formal process of submitting a dungeon entry permit application. Since he is now a freelancer, he must handle the paperwork himself, rather than relying on a guild. Once the receptionist authorizes his request with a beep, Tanaka thanks her, finally cleared to enter the dungeon. With the formalities completed, Tanaka Makoto walks away from the reception desk and makes his way into the dungeon. Accompanied by his floating camera drone, he steps forward into the dark cavern, ready to begin his broadcast. Standing at the edge of a massive, dark hole, Tanaka Makoto looks down into the void. His livestream chat is filled with reactions, with viewers claiming falling in would be certain death and questioning if even the famous Swordmaster can handle such a drop. Undeterred by the height or the chat's pessimism, Tanaka resolves to follow Adaka's advice and handle the situation the only way he knows how, by brute forcing it. As Asura watches in confusion, wondering why he is still there and recognizing him as the course word, Tanaka Makoto suddenly leaps into the void with a simple hup, leaving the onlookers completely stunned. As Tanaka Makoto dives headfirst into the depths, the onlookers and the online chat erupt in chaos, convinced that he has just committed a fatal mistake. As he plunges deeper, Tanaka wonders if he should have warned his audience, but remembers Adaka's advice about keeping things surprising. Seeing the chat explode in panic, he's satisfied that the stream is becoming lively. With a quick hup, he rotates his body in midair and slams into the rocky floor with a thunderous thud, creating a massive crater upon impact. Plunging through the air at an incredible speed, Tanaka Makoto calmly warns his viewers that the view might make them dizzy. Meanwhile, the live stream chat is in complete chaos, with viewers screaming in terror, questioning his survival, and some even complaining of motion sickness from the sheer intensity of the fall. Remaining completely calm despite the plummet, Tanaka Makoto notes that the live stream has become quite lively. Satisfied that his daring jump was the right move to capture the audience's attention, he prepares himself to slow down as he rapidly approaches the rocky floor below. With a sharp hup, Tanaka Makoto slams his sword into the ground, creating a loud clank. He skids across the rocky surface with a series of metallic clacks, finally coming to a complete stop in a controlled crouched position. With a series of sharp clanks, Tanaka Makoto slams into the ground, the sheer force of his landing shattering the rock and leaving a deep crater beneath him. The sheer force of the landing sends Tanaka Makoto skidding across the floor of the abyss. He plants his sword firmly into the ground, the blade screeching as it acts as a brake to halt his momentum. With a final thunderous bam, Tanaka Makoto completes his descent. As the dust settles around him, he remains completely unfazed, glancing at the surge of comments on his stream and calmly stating, "All right," while his viewers are left reeling from the sheer intensity of his descent, some feeling motion sick, and others in awe of his superhuman abilities. Tanaka Makoto remains completely unfazed. He casually announces that it is now time to enter the West Shinjuku Precipice dungeon, leaving the chat in a state of disbelief. Standing before the massive stone entrance of the dungeon, Tanaka Makoto thinks to himself that this is exactly what he has been searching for. Despite his extreme actions, he remains impeccably polite to his audience, wishing them an enjoyable stream. His viewers are left bewildered, debating whether his corporate manners make him normal or if jumping off a cliff proves he is anything but. With a steady pace, Tanaka Makoto approaches the massive stone entrance of the dungeon. As he steps forward, a heavy rumble echoes through the area, signaling that things are about to get a bit shaky. Tanaka Makoto steps further into the depths of the dungeon. The environment reveals the typical traits of such places, stretching deep underground and occasionally housing ancient ruins. However, the most critical aspect remains: the monsters that dwell within. The narrative notes that monsters are generally confined to dungeons, though those that venture outside are swiftly dealt with by the Monster Subjugation Unit, the group Amatsuki belongs to. As Tanaka Makoto delves deeper, a monster suddenly appears before him, prompting him to calmly remark on its early arrival. A group of goblins, armed with knives and clubs, surround Tanaka Makoto. The narrative explains that while they use weapons, their intelligence and strength are minimal, making them rank threat lowest class. Looking at the 5 monsters, Tanaka calmly wonders if such a weak group is even worth filming for his viewers. With a calm and indifferent expression, Tanaka Makoto draws his blade in one fluid motion. The goblins, once aggressive, are now frozen in fear, as he prepares to end the encounter instantly. In a flash of steel, Tanaka Makoto wipes out the goblins before they can even react, leaving nothing but debris in his wake. As he calmly sheathes his blade with a sharp click, he dismisses the weak enemies, doubting they could even track his movements. Turning his attention back to the stream, he tells his audience that it's time to head to the middle level for a real show. The stream's chat explodes with shock as viewers struggle to comprehend Tanaka Makoto's speed, with even a brank adventurer admitting he couldn't track the movement. As the audience marvels at how he vanished from the camera's sight, Tanaka looks on with a confused expression. He wonders why everyone is so fired up over a simple fight with goblins, concluding that most viewers probably aren't adventurers and don't realize how easy the task actually was. Tanaka Makoto addresses his viewers, awkwardly thanking them for their enthusiasm, while insisting that defeating goblins was no big deal. He tries to be encouraging, suggesting that they too could achieve such speed with a bit of practice. However, the viewers are quick to dismiss the idea, admitting that while they can fight goblins, his movements were on a completely different level. Confused by their reaction, Tanaka wonders to himself if he went a bit overboard. Tanaka Makoto continues to play it cool, explaining to his viewers that he simply moved faster than the camera could capture. However, the chat quickly erupts in panic, warning him that different monsters are approaching. Without hesitation, Tanaka leaps into the air, ready to engage the new enemies. Tanaka Makoto sighs in annoyance as he identifies the new threats. Dungeon rats. While they possess strength comparable to the goblins he just defeated, their agility and disgusting smell make them a real pain to deal with. Tanaka Makoto recalls the nightmare of dealing with dungeon rats in the past, specifically how their rotten blood leaves a stench that is nearly impossible to wash off. Looking at his stream chat, he sees his viewers reacting with similar disgust. Realizing that everyone agrees on how repulsive these monsters are, Tanaka Makoto decides to share a tip with his audience, promising to show them an easy way to take down dungeon rats while avoiding their stench. The viewers react with a mix of curiosity and doubt, even as the aggressive creatures let out piercing screeches, ready to attack. With a sharp, focused gaze, Tanaka Makoto grips his sword and strikes. In a sudden flash of steel, he cuts through the dungeon rats instantly, executing his promised method with overwhelming efficiency. With a single explosive burst of power, Tanaka Makoto clears the area, sending the dungeon rats flying in every direction. As the monsters crash to the ground with heavy thuds, Tanaka looks on with a satisfied smile, noting that this technique keeps him perfectly clean from their wretched stench. Tanaka Makoto explains that the technique he just used is called the flying blade, which creates a sonic boom by moving at supersonic speeds. He calmly asks his viewers if they have any questions, hoping the method is useful to them. Meanwhile, the stream chat erupts in shock, with many viewers claiming that such a feat is simply impossible. Tanaka is left stunned by the chat's response, instead of finding the flying blade technique helpful. The viewers are simply shocked that such a feat is even possible for a human. Confused by the lack of the expected reaction, Tanaka wonders if he should try a different approach to explain things. Meanwhile, a message from Adachi pops up on his phone, cheering him on and telling him to keep it up. After receiving Adachi's encouragement, Tanaka Makoto decides to stick with his current approach a bit longer. Though still slightly unsure, he tells his viewers that he'll be heading to the middle level of the dungeon. As he makes his way deeper into the cavern, he informs his audience that he has set up a question box on social media, inviting them to send in any questions they may have. Moving deeper into the dungeon, Tanaka Makoto is confronted by a group of formidable monsters. Without hesitation, he unleashes a series of high-speed strikes, cutting through the creatures with absolute precision as he continues his journey. As the ground rumbles around him, Tanaka Makoto reaches the boundary of the middle level. He acknowledges that the difficulty is about to spike, reminding himself that stronger monsters will appear from this point forward. Tanaka Makoto notes that visually, the upper and middle levels of the dungeon are nearly identical, with only a slight darkening of the surroundings. However, he explains that the true difference is the amount of mana essence present. He describes mana essence as a mysterious energy capable of awakening latent human abilities, which becomes more concentrated the deeper one descends into the dungeon. Tanaka Makoto warns his audience that rushing into lower levels can be fatal, comparing the need for adaptation to diving or mountain climbing. He references a news report about 18 Wakers, hospitalized for mana essence poisoning, advising his viewers to be cautious of the toxic effects caused by excessive exposure in a short amount of time. As Tanaka warns his audience, viewers quickly point out that he once jumped straight into the lower levels himself. Slightly flustered, Tanaka admits to it, explaining that he possesses a much higher resistance to mana essence than the average person. However, he sternly warns his viewers not to attempt such a feat, as a regular person would likely explode. Tanaka Makoto notices that his viewers are fascinated by his ability to resist mana essence, with some even jokingly calling him the ultimate corporate drone moth. After glancing around to ensure no monsters are nearby, he decides it's safe to answer their questions, explaining that the more time one spends in dungeons, the more the body naturally adjusts to the mana essence. Tanaka Makoto explains that to reach his level of resistance, one would need to spend at least 5 years working 350 hours of overtime every month in dungeons. He gives a cheerful thumbs up, noting that spending that much time in such environments naturally builds up the body's resistance. The chat erupts in a mix of disbelief and horror, as viewers react to the soul-crushing amount of overtime Tanaka endured. Some express pity, while others curse his former boss, Suda, for the exploitation. Looking at the comments, Tanaka can't help but agree, acknowledging that he would never want to go back to that kind of life. Tanaka Makoto suddenly spots something useful. He informs his viewers that besides grueling overtime, one can also build resistance by eating things found within the dungeon. He picks up a glowing bluish mushroom, identifying it as a luminous cap, a species that only grows in dungeons. Tanaka Makoto explains that the luminous cap is packed with mana essence, allowing those who eat it to absorb the essence and build up their resistance. With a cheerful look, he tells his viewers, "Let's dig in," and eats the mushroom right in front of the camera. Tanaka Makoto chews on the luminous cap, noting that while the texture is strange, the flavor isn't bad. His viewers are absolutely horrified, flooding the chat with comments about the dangers of eating glowing things and the grossness of eating it raw. Noticing the viewers' weirded out reactions, Tanaka Makoto warns them to take it slow when eating such plants, as absorbing mana essence too quickly can lead to poisoning. With a bittersweet expression, he reveals the grim reality of his past. His workload was so insane that he didn't even have time for proper meals, forcing him to survive on raw dungeon flora. Tanaka Makoto recalls the dark days of his corporate slavery, admitting there was a time he almost died from severe stomach aches after eating raw dungeon plants. However, after 3 years of enduring such conditions, his body finally adapted, allowing him to consume them without pain. Smiling at the memory, he notes that human adaptability is truly amazing, while his viewers begin to question if this grueling process is what granted him his overwhelming strength. The viewers are awestruck and sympathetic, realizing the brutal cost of Tanaka Makoto's strength. As they discuss the dangers of trying to mimic his methods, one viewer sends a donation of 5,000 yen to cheer him up. Confused and surprised, Tanaka wonders if the platform has introduced a new special chat feature. Tanaka stares at the notification, recalling that the special chat is a tipping feature he read about in the documents Adachi provided. He is genuinely surprised that someone would actually send him money, but quickly realizes he needs to show gratitude. Flustered, he awkwardly thanks the viewer for the special chat. Overwhelmed by the unexpected support, Tanaka Makoto exclaims that the special chat feature has been unlocked. Excited by the prospect of finally having a decent meal, he bows deeply and formally, thanking his viewers with heartfelt sincerity. Tanaka Makoto stares in disbelief as his chat window explodes with a flurry of special chat donations. From small tips for lunch to larger resignation gifts, his viewers shower him with money and supportive messages, overwhelming the corporate slave with an unexpected windfall. Stunned by the sheer amount of support and kindness from his viewers, Tanaka Makoto is moved to tears, completely overwhelmed by the sudden generosity. Overwhelmed by the sudden wave of support, Tanaka Makoto covers his face and weeps. Apologizing to his audience for the display of emotion, he reflects on how he has never been treated with such kindness before. Feeling as though all the suffering of his past has finally paid off, with a heart full of gratitude, he declares how glad he is that he left his soul-crushing job to become a streamer, while the chat reacts with a mixture of concern, empathy, and light-hearted teasing. Clenching his fist with newfound determination, Tanaka Makoto shouts with all his might, thanking everyone for their kindness, and promising to give his absolute best to ensure his streams live up to their expectations. Tanaka Makoto bows deeply, pleading for his viewers' continued support. The chat explodes with affectionate messages, with some viewers even vowing to get part-time jobs just to donate more to him. Once the emotional moment passes, Tanaka straightens up and looks at the camera with a determined expression. He tells his audience that it's time to move on and encourages them to ask any further questions as he continues his journey. Tanaka Makoto continues his trek deeper into the dungeon. Noticing the eerie stillness, he muses that things are unusually quiet today, though he expects a monster to appear at any moment. With a determined smile, he hopes for a grand battle, wanting to take down a foe in an epic way to live up to the high expectations of his audience. Just as Tanaka Makoto was hoping for some action, a piercing scream echoes through the tunnel. Startled, he wonders if it was a girl in distress. Meanwhile, his viewers react in the chat, speculating that other parties might have entered the dungeon before the elevator broke down, raising concerns about a potential accident. Driven by the scream, Tanaka Makoto bolts forward at an incredible speed, leaving a trail of debris in his wake. His viewers are left in awe, comparing him to a bullet train, while some jokingly worry about the drone's ability to keep up with such a frantic pace. Tanaka Makoto tears through the dungeon, his sheer speed causing the earth to crack and explode in his wake. As the viewers in the chat continue to joke about needing motion sickness medication to keep up with the camera, Tanaka's expression turns grim. He tells himself that he isn't trying to play the hero, but if there is someone he can save, he will do so. However, as he races forward, a sense of dread hits him, realizing that something is not right. As Tanaka Makoto continues his sprint, he notices that the monsters around him seem unusually agitated. He can't quite describe it, but an unsettling vibe permeates the air. Knowing that unexpected things can happen in these situations, he tells himself to stay sharp. Suddenly, he catches sight of something in the distance. Tanaka Makoto arrives just in time to see a red-haired woman cornered by several massive minotaur. The woman is panting heavily, clearly pushed to her absolute limit. Shocked by the sight, Tanaka realizes that she has been fighting these beasts all by herself. As the battle reaches a breaking point, Lyra is forced into a desperate defense, using her sword to barely hold back a massive fist from the Minotaur. Overwhelmed and exhausted, she can only plead for help, while Tanaka Makoto observes the dire situation from a distance. With a final burst of strength, Lyra shouts for the monster to go away as she manages to push the Minotaur back. However, the clash leaves her breathless and wounded, her body trembling from sheer exhaustion as she gasps for air. Tanaka Makoto is shocked to realize that Lyra is diving solo, noting how dangerous it is for someone her age. His viewers quickly remind him that he used to do the same, though Tanaka defensively explains to Theo that his former company forced him into those solo missions. As he reflects, the sheer lethality of the dungeons is highlighted in the deep levels, where monsters and deadly traps abound. A single mistake can easily lead to death without a partner to watch one's back. A dungeon is no game. There are no second chances once you die. Lyra stands dwarfed by 3 massive ogres, demon-type monsters over 2 meters tall known for their intelligence and immense strength. Watching from the sidelines, Tanaka Makoto acknowledges her competence but realizes that her opponents are simply too strong for her to overcome. To make matters worse, there are 10 ogres in total. They are working as a team to surround Lyra, gradually wearing her down so that she won't even be able to escape. Trapped and overwhelmed, Lyra's face is filled with terror as the menacing monsters close in on her. As the battle unfolds, Tanaka's viewers begin to question the presence of the ogres, noting that these monsters usually only appear in areas below the lower levels. They speculate that this is an irregularity, a rare phenomenon, where something abnormal occurs within a dungeon. Tanaka reflects on their observations, agreeing that an irregularity may indeed be the cause of this dangerous encounter. Tanaka continues his explanation, noting that a swarm of monsters appearing in levels where they don't belong is a classic example of an irregularity. As he speaks, the situation for Lyra turns dire. She is violently knocked back by the overwhelming force of the ogres, left gasping for air as the monsters close in. Lyra manages to strike one of the ogres with a powerful blow, but the impact leaves her gasping for air. As she struggles to recover, her sword is knocked from her hand with a sharp clink, leaving her terrified and defenseless against the monsters. Lyra stares in sheer terror as the menacing ogre looms over her, its predatory gaze locking onto her. Just as the situation seems hopeless, the sound of steady footsteps echoes through the debris. A man in a suit calmly walks toward the scene, his presence cutting through the tension. With a thunderous impact, Tanaka Makoto descends from above, slamming into the rubble. He lands firmly and decisively, stepping in just in time to shield the defenseless Lyra from the ogre's attack. In a blur of motion, Tanaka Makoto delivers a series of precise, lightning-fast strikes. The ogre is caught completely off guard, its eyes widening in confusion and pain as it is slashed down by the overwhelming speed of the swordsman. With the ogre stunned and wounded, Tanaka Makoto stands as a solid wall between the monster and Lyra, shielding her from further harm. The ogre can only let out a confused groan, completely overwhelmed by Tanaka's sudden and overwhelming power. As the ogre's body dissolves into mana essence to be reabsorbed by the dungeon, a single horn is left behind on the rubble. Tanaka Makoto notes that while the horn is a valuable drop, his immediate priority is the bewildered Lyra, who can only stare in shock at the speed of the monster's demise. Panicking internally, Tanaka Makoto carries Lyra in his arms, questioning if such an action is even acceptable. While he asks if she is okay, he is terrified that she might sue him for the unsolicited contact. Lyra is visibly shaken and blushing, unable to respond coherently to the situation. Tanaka Makoto asks Lyra if she can stand, to which she shyly confirms she is fine. While observing her condition, Tanaka notes that although she is exhausted, she isn't badly hurt and should be able to walk. As he helps her up, he politely introduces himself as Makoto Tanaka and asks for her name. Yui Hoshino reacts with utter shock, realizing that the man who saved her is the renowned corporate drone Swordmaster. She introduces herself as a dungeon streamer and checks her recording drone, relieved to find it still operational. Tanaka Makoto, however, remains deadpan, reflecting on how his nickname has become surprisingly well-known, even to strangers. The live stream chat erupts as viewers recognize Yui Hoshino, the super cute adventurer, and begin speculating about a potential collaboration. Tanaka Makoto observes the comments, noting that someone has already reported the irregularity to the Dungeon Management Bureau. However, he remains skeptical about receiving help, knowing that everything inside a dungeon is the adventurer's own responsibility, unless they are part of a guild. Reflecting on the indifference of his former guild, Tanaka Makoto asks Yush Hoshino how she ended up in such a dangerous situation. Yush, visibly distressed, recounts her ordeal. While live streaming in the middle levels, she was suddenly attacked by an ogre. Terrified and unfamiliar with the lower levels, she ran for her life, but the monsters relentlessly pursued her deeper and deeper into the dungeon. Yui Hoshino tearfully describes how she was eventually cornered by the monsters. Seeing her distress, Tanaka Makoto reflects on his own past, remembering the sheer terror he felt when he first began entering dungeons. Understanding her fear, he gently pats her and tells her that she did her best. With a determined expression, Tanaka Makoto adjusts his tie and tells Yui Hoshino that she can rest easy now, as he will handle the situation from here. As the menacing ogres loom in the distance, Yu gazes at him, feeling a sudden sense of security and hope. Tanaka Makoto steps forward to face the 9 ogres, leaving Yui Hoshino safely behind. As he approaches the menacing creatures, he reflects on how boring these upper-level monsters are, compared to the overwhelming threats he has encountered in the deep levels. With a composed expression, he reaches for the hilt of his sword, ready to dispose of the monsters. In a flash, Tanaka Makoto strikes. The ogres are caught completely off guard, barely having time to react before they are sliced through. "What, you're scurrying away?" he asks coldly as the monsters let out a final guttural scream. With a sharp ching, Tanaka Makoto draws his sword, standing composed before the menacing ogres. Meanwhile, the live stream viewers are in a frenzy while some fear the danger. Others are eager to witness his skills, with donations pouring in as they urge the corporate drone to show them something amazing. The towering ogre looms over Tanaka Makoto, raising its massive club for a crushing blow. Despite the overwhelming size of the beast, Tanaka remains unfazed, his eyes narrowing with cold precision as he prepares to end the fight. In a flash of steel, Tanaka Makoto lunges forward, catching the ogre completely off guard. With a single precise strike, he cuts through the massive creature, calmly returning to his stance as the monster is sliced apart behind him. With a single devastating blow, Tanaka Makoto splits the towering ogre right down the middle. As the monster lets out a final choked gasp, Tanaka calmly turns away, his expression devoid of any effort or emotion. Another ogre lunges forward, but Tanaka Makoto is far too fast. With a single blinding slash, he cuts the beast down without even breaking his stride. Looking on with a bored expression, he simply remarks that the monster was too slow. With a final blinding flash of his blade, Tanaka Makoto slices through the monster. He calmly sheathes his sword with a sharp click, letting out a small huff of indifference as the battle ends effortlessly. A thunderous boom echoes through the dungeon as the ogres are obliterated by the sheer force of Tanaka Makoto's previous strikes. Having already sheathed his blade, Tanaka stands in complete silence, the aftermath of his overwhelming power leaving nothing but rubble behind. A blinding flash of light erupts as the stored energy from Tanaka Makoto's strikes finally detonates. The surrounding ogres are vaporized in a violent burst of power, leaving Tanaka standing calmly amidst the devastation, his composure absolute. The devastating impact leaves the ogres completely shattered, their bodies cracking and crumbling into dust. With total indifference, Tanaka Makoto steps over the wreckage, his corporate name tag serving as a stark contrast to the absolute destruction he just unleashed. With a final swift motion, Tanaka Makoto comes to a halt. He stands indifferent and composed amidst the carnage of the shattered ogres. The name Tanaka clearly visible on his scabbard as he maintains his absolute dominance over the battlefield. The ogres burst into pieces with a series of pops, as Tanaka Makoto lets out a weary sigh. The live stream chat floods with praise. Viewers are mesmerized by his strength, with some offering guild invitations and others seeing him as a symbol of liberation from the corporate grind, calling him the hero of all corporate drones. The live stream chat continues to explode, this time focusing on Yui Hoshino's enamored gaze toward Tanaka Makoto. Viewers tease her for being in love, while others jokingly admit that they too have become lova-struck by his overwhelming strength. Amidst the digital chaos and US admiration, Tanaka simply stares blankly, looking completely drained. The last ogre lets out a guttural groan, struggling to stay upright as the ground rumbles around them. Tanaka Makoto calmly grips the hilt of his sword, preparing for the final strike. He observes that the monster should have realized it was outmatched by now, yet it refuses to flee, showing a glimmer of pride as a warrior. Tanaka Makoto shifts his stance, his expression turning serious. "He'll take you on at full strength," he declares. The ogre, sensing the sudden surge in power, looks on in shock before letting out a thunderous roar and stomping forward to meet its end. Utilizing his self-taught sword style, Tanaka Makoto sheathes his blade and drops into a focused stance. Though the ogre might perceive this as a vulnerability, Tanaka knows he has already won to him. This stance is like putting a gun to the monster's head. All that remains is to pull the trigger and end the battle in a single flash. Tanaka acknowledges the ogre's strength, but it is simply not enough. In a blur of motion, he unleashes the flash slash. The attack is so incredibly fast that the opponent doesn't even notice the blade moving by the time the ogre realizes what happened. It has already been slashed. With a sharp click, Tanaka Makoto sheathes his blade, calmly stating that the ogre's opponent was simply too strong. The monster, now split vertically down the middle, lets out a confused cry, realizing it has just been struck by the fastest quick-draw slash. As Tanaka Makoto stands calmly amidst the fallen monsters, the livestream chat erupts in a frenzy. Viewers are baffled by the invisible speed of his strike, wondering if he has been holding back all along, while others are completely smitten by his overwhelming power. After the battle, Tanaka Makoto approaches Yui Hoshino and asks if she is okay. He notices her spacing out with a blushing face, wondering if she was simply terrified by the combat. As he observes her fumbling, suddenly snaps back to reality, shouting that she is fine while remaining visibly flustered. Tanaka Makoto decides it is too dangerous to remain in the open, and suggests they find a place to rest. Although Yui Hoshino is still visibly trembling and flustered, she agrees to follow him. As they walk away together, the live stream chat explodes with excitement, with viewers jokingly claiming Tanaka has acquired his first harem member and speculating about what might happen between the two in the dungeon. Flustered by the stream's comments, Tanaka Makoto tells himself that He's too old for Yui Hoshino, and that there's no way he'd make a move on her, though he admits she seems like a nice person. As Yui goes to retrieve her gear, Tanaka suggests they take a short break in a safer spot. While they rest, he quietly assumes that they probably won't run into each other again after they exit the dungeon. Tanaka Makoto announces to his viewers that he is stopping the stream to treat Yui Hoshino's injury, promising to be live again soon. The chat erupts in chaos, with viewers begging him not to stop and even offering money to keep the broadcast going. After cutting the feed, Tanaka reflects that Yui be able to speak freely while being watched by millions. He then kindly instructs her to take a seat and rest. With the stream off, Tanaka Makoto asks Yui Hoshino where she is hurt so he can treat her. Overwhelmed with emotion, Yui apologizes for being a burden and thanks him profusely for the rescue. Despite Tanaka's humble insistence that it was simply the right thing to do for a colleague, Yui remains determined, vowing to return the favor as her mother always taught her to repay kindness twofold. Tanaka Makoto finds Yui Hoshino's brightness almost blinding, a stark contrast to the darkness he feels within himself. He recalls that he once possessed a similar attitude, but years of being a corporate drone stripped it away. Reflecting on how grueling work can change a person, he sincerely hopes Yui never has to endure an exploitative company like he did. Then, he turns to her to say, by the way, Yui Hoshino tells Tanaka Makoto that since she is younger and less experienced, he doesn't need to be so polite, as it makes her feel uneasy. Tanaka agrees, noting that they need to work together to escape the dungeon, and that staying formal would only slow them down. After deciding to loosen up, Tanaka asks Yui where she is hurt, and she points to her leg, explaining that the ogre hit her there. Tanaka Makoto examines Yui Hoshino's leg, noting that it is quite swollen and must be very painful. He tells her he will treat it immediately and pops open a potion bottle. As he pours the liquid onto her injury, Yui is startled, exclaiming that a potion is far too valuable to be used on her. Tanaka calmly reassures her, letting her know that he has more available. Taka tells a worried Yui not to worry about the cost of the potion. As he applies the healing liquid, he reflects on the nature of potions, noting that while they can be bought, they are incredibly expensive. He recalls how his previous exploitative guild never provided such essentials, forcing him to learn how to make them himself. Thanks to his experience in the deep levels of the dungeon, gathering the rare materials needed for crafting was never a problem for him. Tanaka Makoto finishes applying the potion, noting that while selling items made from dungeon materials is prohibited, using them for oneself is perfectly legal. Yui is stunned as the swelling in her leg rapidly subsides. When Tanaka suggests she try moving, Yui is surprised by how quickly she has recovered. Yui Hoshino jumps up with joy, exclaiming that the pain is gone. Tanaka Makoto is glad to hear it, but as he watches her bounce energetically, he is caught off guard. Seeing her exuberant reaction, he silently breathes a sigh of relief that he ended the stream before this happened. Tanaka Makoto asks Yui Hoshino why she decided to come to such a dangerous place by herself. While he acknowledges that she was capable of holding her own against ogres in the upper levels, he warns her that the middle levels are a completely different story. He explains that monsters here are far more treacherous, employing a wide range of tactics such as sneak attacks, long-range strikes, poison, and traps, making solo exploration incredibly risky. Yui Hoshino looks down regretfully, admitting that she knew the risks but felt desperate to gain more viewers in the upper levels. Tanaka Makoto listens with a concerned expression, acknowledging her struggle but firmly stating that no amount of fame is worth risking her life. He gently suggests that as a student, she doesn't need to push herself to such dangerous extremes. Yui Hoshino opens up about her difficult home life, explaining that she was raised by a single mother and is desperate to pay for her brother's tuition. She admits that for a college student, the only streaming in or nightlife work, which is why she ignored the risks. Stunned by the gravity of her situation, Tanaka Makoto suggests she join a guild for a more stable income, However, Yui points out the harsh reality that major guilds typically require a college degree for entry. Tanaka Makoto reflects on the harsh reality of the job market, noting that those without college degrees are often forced into exploitative companies like his former employer. Yui Hoshino explains that she started streaming not just for the money, but in hopes that a major guild might scout her. Overwhelmed by guilt for speaking without knowing her full situation, Tanaka bows deeply in a sincere apology, while a flustered Yui quickly insists that it's okay. Yui Hoshino shares a heartfelt thought, admitting that no one had ever helped her the way Tanaka did, and that it felt like having a father. While Tanaka is initially touched, he quickly becomes concerned that she views him as an old man. Yui panics and quickly apologizes, clarifying that she didn't mean it in a negative way. Yui Hoshino panics, quickly insisting that Tanaka Makoto doesn't look old and is more like a reliable, older brother. Tanaka chuckles, telling her he was just teasing. As the mood settles, Tanaka reflects on their similar struggles and shares a painful memory. He reveals that his parent was hospitalized with mana essence poisoning, leaving him with no choice but to start working at Suda's company immediately after middle school to cover the medical bills. Recalling the pain and hardship of his past, Tanaka Makoto realizes he would have broken down if he had remained a corporate drone any longer. Seeing Yui Hoshino's desperation, he is determined to do whatever he can to prevent her from falling into the same hell. He places a hand on her shoulder, telling her that while he cannot be a father to her, he recognizes how much she has endured and is ready to help. With a determined expression, Tanaka Makoto vows to protect Yui Hoshino and promises that she can count on him until they leave the dungeon. Overwhelmed by his words, Yui blushes intensely, stuttering her response and thanking him for taking care of her. Tanaka is left confused by Yui's intense blushing, wondering if he accidentally said something wrong. Shaking off the awkwardness, he decides it's time to get the stream back up to keep everyone updated on their situation. However, the moment of calm is interrupted as a stone monster nearby begins to crack. As soon as the stream goes live, Tanaka is hit with a chaotic wave of chat messages. The viewers are absolutely losing it over his promise to protect Yui, calling it a perfect pickup line, and even sending wedding gifts in the form of large donations. Completely bewildered by the sudden shift in atmosphere and the fans' obsession, Tanaka can only shout in confusion, "What is this?" Tanaka Makoto freezes in absolute shock as the realization hits him. He had thought he ended the stream, but he had only disabled the video. The viewers, who heard every word of his heartfelt promise to Yui, waste no time in mocking him, from calling him classic coarse word to announcing that his voice has already been uploaded as ASMR on Tube. The chat is in a frenzy of amusement at his expense. Panicking, Tanaka Makoto frantically taps his device to finally end the stream, lamenting his clumsy mistake. He awkwardly apologizes to Yui Hoshino, fearing he has exposed too much of her personal history to the world. However, Yui is completely fine with it, cheerfully reminding him that he should be far more worried about the romantic things he said that the entire audience just heard. Tanaka Makoto is puzzled by Yui's reaction, thinking she is worrying about the wrong things. He tries to reassure her that he didn't say anything that would cause trouble, but Yui suddenly becomes intense, emphatically stating that everything she said was honest and came straight from her heart. Tanaka Makoto stands there, utterly confused by Yui Hoshino's overwhelmed state, unable to understand what is going through her mind. As he observes her, he recalls that Amatsuki had reacted in a similar way in the past. He decides that the next time he sees Amatsuki, he will ask her what that kind of reaction actually means. Yui Hoshino beams with gratitude, thanking Tanaka Makoto for helping her get her hat and sword back. Tanaka calmly brushes it off, telling her it was no big deal. With the immediate situation resolved, he turns his attention back to his phone and streaming drone to resume the broadcast. Tanaka Makoto returns to the live stream, awkwardly apologizing for the sudden cutoff and explaining that he and Yui Hoshino are heading out of the West Shinjuku Precipice dungeon together. While he tries to keep things professional, the chat is in absolute chaos. The viewers, still reeling from his previous emotional words, begin teasing him relentlessly, speculating with mischievous visclay about what a young man and woman might do, alone, during a 10-minute black. Tanaka Makoto sighs, noting that the viewers still love to gossip as always. Turning his focus to their escape, he looks up at the dungeon ceiling, realizing that while smashing through it would be the quickest way out, Yui Hoshino wouldn't be able to keep up. Accepting that the journey back will take longer, he asks Yui if she is holding up and can run on her own, to which she enthusiastically replies that she is totally fine. Tanaka Makoto tells Yui Hoshino it's time to leave, reminding himself to keep a steady pace since she is a power-type fighter rather than a speed-based one. Yui enthusiastically agrees. However, as they proceed through the rocky terrain, a small lizard-like creature on the wall suddenly triggers a loud boom. Tanaka Makoto and Yui Hoshino sprint through the dungeon corridors. Tanaka checks in on Yui, asking if she can maintain the pace, to which she enthusiastically confirms she is doing fine. As they continue their journey, Tanaka curiously asks why she doesn't team up with other hunters, noting that even without joining a guild, having a partner would be much safer when navigating the middle levels. Yui Hoshino admits that she is frequently asked to collaborate, but she notes that the men who approach her often have a scary look in their eyes. Tanaka Makoto immediately understands her meaning, reflecting on how her naive appearance likely attracts predatory men who use collaborations as a mere excuse to get close to her. Tanaka Makoto thinks to himself about how Yui's innocence and cuteness naturally attract creeps, marveling that she hasn't been tricked. Yet he tells her that this makes him her first real collaboration. When he jokingly apologizes for her first collab, being with an old guy like him, Yui Hoshino firmly disagrees, exclaiming that she is actually glad he is the first person she's collaborated with. Yui Hoshino suddenly realizes the weight of her words and panics, covering her face in embarrassment. Meanwhile, the stream chat is in a frenzy, calling her pure and claiming she and Tanaka are a perfect match. Tanaka Makoto simply sighs, telling himself that the viewers are being unrealistic, and that there is no way a girl as cute as Yui would actually be into him. Tanaka tells a flustered Yui not to worry, noting that the viewers seem to enjoy the romantic tension. However, his expression suddenly shifts to one of alertness. He abruptly stops and signals Yui to be quiet, warning her that he hears someone approaching. A heavy silence descends upon the area. Yui Hoshino looks around, puzzled as she can't hear a thing. However, Tanaka Makoto remains completely still, closing his eyes and focusing his hearing to detect whatever is lurking in the darkness, while Yui Hoshino remains confused by the silence. Tanaka Makoto focuses his senses and detects a human voice coming from a nearby passage. He confirms that it sounds like a fight is breaking out, recalling reports of adventurer groups entering the dungeon earlier that morning. Meanwhile, the stream chat is divided, with some viewers barely hearing the faint noise while others speculate about the danger of the situation. Tanaka Makoto worries that the adventurers are in danger and wants to help immediately. But he hesitates, not wanting to leave Yui Hoshino behind. However, Yui grabs his arm with a determined look, insisting that they cannot simply ignore people in need and go home. Yui Hoshino pleads with Tanaka Makoto, promising that she won't slow him down. Unable to refuse her earnest request, Tanaka reluctantly agrees, warning her to run away if the situation becomes too dangerous. With a determined agreement from Yui, the two set off together. With a determined expression, Tanaka Makoto tells Yui Hoshino to follow him. She quickly agrees, and the two of them sprint rapidly through the cavern, heading toward the source of the fighting. Tanaka Makoto sprints toward the dark mouth of a cave, urging Yui Hoshino to get ready. As they arrive, a sharp sound catches their attention, followed by a sudden, explosive burst of energy emanating from the depths. The violent rumbling leads to a grim sight. A Sora is trapped and fighting for their lives. They are besieged by eerie hooded figures and a massive sphere of dark energy. Desperate and terrified, they struggle to hold their ground, with one noting that this is already the second time they faced such a nightmare today. With a determined look, Tanaka Makoto leaps forward, declaring it's time to get to work. In a flash, he delivers a powerful strike, cutting through a hooded monster before it can even react. With a devastating strike, Tanaka Makoto tears through one of the Mika, sending it flying with a piercing shriek. The remaining Mika and the stunned adventurers can only stare in disbelief at his overwhelming power. As he calmly sheathes his sword with a sharp click, Tanaka looks on with a bored expression, noting that even more troublesome monsters have shown up. Tanaka Makoto identifies the Mika as dungeon sorceress creatures of black mist that typically dwell in the lower levels of the dungeon. He acknowledges that as a swordsman, mages are his worst matchup due to their unpredictable ranged magic. However, he recalls the core principle of his craft. By reading the slightest shifts in an opponent's posture and gaze, a master swordsman can predict any move, even those of a monster. As he steps on a defeated Mika, Tanaka Makoto reflects on the difficulty of fighting mages, noting that their attacks are unpredictable and defy standard physical cues. He mentions that after defeating 10,000 Magitype monsters, he acquired the ability to read mana fluctuations to predict their next move. However, he admits that he doesn't even need to rely on that skill because he has an even more effective method. With a sudden and decisive movement, Tanaka Makoto reveals the true power of his method. The dungeon sorcerers are caught in a violent explosion of force, their screams echoing as they are effortlessly wiped out in an instant. With a blur of speed, Tanaka Makoto cuts through the Mika monsters. He explains his logic by taking them out before they even notice his presence. He ensures they never get the chance to cast a single spell. With a series of lightning-fast strikes, Tanaka Makoto shreds the Mika monsters to pieces. As they dissipate, he calmly explains that a dungeon sorcerer's true body is actually the robe, not the mist. making them a hassle to face head-on, though clearly not for someone of his caliber. Standing calmly amidst the debris of the defeated monsters, Tanaka Makoto reflects that as long as they are denied the chance to cast magic, dungeon sorcerers are among the easiest opponents to handle. He notes that inflicting enough damage quickly is the key to taking them down. Meanwhile, the stream chat erupts, with viewers laughing at the monster's lack of opportunity to fight back, while others lament that his simple solution is nearly impossible for an ordinary hunter to execute. The stream chat erupts as viewers share their disbelief and odd excitement over Tanaka Makoto's overwhelming power and his professional attire. As the comments spiral into chaos, Tanaka simply stands amidst the ruins, staring at the tattered robes of the monsters he'd just obliterated. After clearing the field, Tanaka Makoto calmly approaches the remaining adventurers to ask for a briefing on the situation. The group is completely overwhelmed, their shock turning into pure excitement as they realize they are standing in the presence of the real coursework. After the initial shock wears off, the adventurers apologize for their outburst. Tanaka, amused by his own fame, asks them to fill him in on what happened. As he listens, it is revealed that the 5 survivors were originally from 2 separate parties who decided to team up and attempt an escape once they realized something was wrong with the dungeon. Through a flashback, the adventurers describe their misfortune. They were agonizingly close to reaching the upper level, but a pack of dungeon sorcerers closed in on them, leaving them trapped and desperate. Tanaka Makoto listens calmly, absorbing the details of their situation. Tanaka Makoto tells the group that he will clear a path for them to escape. When the adventurers react with hesitation and confusion, he calmly reassures them. With a sharp gaze and a firm grip on his sword, he reveals that he has fought and defeated dungeon sorcerers so many times that he has lost count, leaving them completely shocked by his confidence. The adventurers are completely bewildered when Tanaka Makoto suddenly reveals a briefcase, leaving them wondering where he could have possibly hidden it. Unfazed by their shock, Tanaka explains that he is wearing a special suit specifically designed with pockets to carry plenty of gear. The adventurers are completely floored, realizing that Tanaka possesses a dimension-expanding item, something ultra and incredibly expensive, that is typically only found in the deep levels. As Tanaka opens the briefcase, he explains that he has collected several items with special effects from his time in dungeons. A brief memory surfaces of his former boss, Suda. Knowing Suda's greed, Tanaka had kept these valuable finds a secret to prevent them from being claimed by the company. Without further delay, Tanaka Makoto lunges at the dungeon sorcerers. In a flash of steel, he tears through their defenses, leaving the monsters screaming in agony as they are brutally cut down. The impact of Tanaka Makoto's strike is absolute, blasting the dungeon sorcerers away in a burst of energy. The adventurers from Sora can only watch in terror and awe, screaming in shock as the ground beneath them shatters from the sheer force of the blow. As the dust settles from the explosive impact, Tanaka Makoto stands firm, still clutching his briefcase. His gaze is cold and unwavering, a stark contrast to the absolute chaos he just unleashed upon his enemies. With a swift and powerful strike, Tanaka Makoto slams his briefcase down, shouting there. As a devastating shockwave erupts from the impact, the sheer force of the attack leaves the Mika completely bewildered and overwhelmed. The impact is devastating, sending the Mika into a scream of pure agony as it is blown apart. Tanaka Makoto calmly grips his briefcase, while the members of Sora can only stare in wide-eyed shock, unable to comprehend the sheer strength he just unleashed. With the enemy defeated, Tanaka Makoto stands composed amidst the destruction, simply stating, "All right," as he maintains his cool demeanor. With the battle over, Tanaka Makoto suddenly remembers the season and suggests to Yui Hoshino that they try some watermelon splitting. Yui is completely shocked, questioning how watermelons could possibly be found inside a dungeon. Tanaka simply points towards something in the distance, noting that he recalls them having a formal name. Yui Hoshino stares up in shock at a massive monster that resembles a giant watermelon, with a single large eye. It is revealed to be a watermelonster, the strange dungeon inhabitant Tanaka Makoto had mentioned. Yui Hoshino screams in shock, realizing the watermelonster is a rank monster. Terrified, she asks Tanaka Makoto what they should do. Tanaka calmly tells her not to worry and puts on a blindfold, declaring that it's finally time for his watermelon splitting. With a blindfold over his eyes, Tanaka Makoto executes a series of lightning-fast strikes. Using his self-taught sword style, he effortlessly carves through the watermelonsters as if they were mere fruit. With a blinding flash, Tanaka Makoto unleashes his 1,000 light fireworks technique. A web of precise, intersecting slashes erupts across the battlefield, instantly shredding the watermelonsters into fragments. With a sharp click, Tanaka Makoto sheathes his blade as the sliced remains of the monsters fall around him. He calmly lifts his blindfold, glancing forward and asking, "Well?" With his blindfold removed, Tanaka Makoto looks exhausted but wears a faint smile, jokingly commenting that it feels quite summery. Beside him, Yui Hoshino can only manage a hollow response, completely shell-shocked by the sight of the obliterated Arank monsters. Tanaka Makoto calmly says all right, as the stream chat erupts in chaos. Viewers are shocked that a dungeon sorcerer was defeated by a simple briefcase, and wonder how the bag survived extreme heat. While some viewers joke about trying the same move, a warning appears, reminding everyone that Tanaka's unnatural resilience comes from his time working for a very special company. With a series of swift and precise movements, Tanaka Makoto continues to pummel the Mika. He strikes them down with his briefcase, delivering a barrage of heavy blows that leave the enemies reeling in shock and pain. Tanaka Makoto delivers a final crushing blow to the Mika with his briefcase. Looking ahead, he notices the path leading to the upper level and decides to proceed. But as he walks, the silence is broken by a sudden screeching attack from another group of Mika monsters leaping from the shadows. Tanaka Makoto relentlessly pummels the Mika monsters with his briefcase, leaving the Sora in absolute shock. It is revealed that this briefcase, known as Aegis, is so durable that it can withstand the flames of a tyrant dragon and the magic of the dungeon sorcerers without a single scratch. With a casual thumbs up, Tanaka tells the group to head for the upper level, while he handles the remaining enemies. The adventurers, deeply grateful, rush toward the upper level as instructed. Tanaka Makoto watches them go, noting that the lower mana concentration there will keep them safe from powerful monsters. With the civilians out of harm's way, he turns his attention back to the remaining Mika, ready to eliminate them once and for all. Just as Tanaka Makoto is about to wipe out the remaining enemies, a menacing figure emerges. It is a black sorcerer, a high-level threat that is completely out of place in the middle levels. Tanaka is visibly stunned by its presence, while the stream chat erupts in panic, claiming that even a master swordsman would stand no chance against such a monster. The black sorcerer lunges at Yui Hoshino, leaving her terrified. Recognizing that the creature's magic far exceeds that of the previous sorcerers, Tanaka Makoto realizes the gravity of the situation. Without hesitation, he springs into action, rushing toward the monster to save Yui just as the black sorcerer is about to land a blow. Yui Hoshino screams out in desperation, but Tanaka Makoto quickly moves to shield her from the black sorcerer. As the battle unfolds, the livestream chat erupts, with some viewers fearing a disaster while others place their faith in Tanaka's strength. Unfazed by the chaos, Tanaka locks his eyes on the enemy, ready to strike. The black sorcerer strikes with blinding speed, leaving Yui Hoshino stunned and vulnerable. As a massive clawed hand closes in on her, Tanaka Makoto charges forward, shouting her name in a desperate attempt to shield her from the lethal blow. Yui Hoshino is suddenly enveloped by swirling ribbons of magical text, her face twisted in terror as she is trapped. Tanaka Makoto grits his teeth in desperation, shouting in frustration that the monster has captured her. The other adventurers can only stare in shock, realizing they are witnessing the black sorcerer's deadly specialty. The black sorcerer cackles, utilizing its terrifying dimensional magic to warp its prey. If Yui Hoshino is sent to the deep levels of the dungeon, there is almost no hope of her ever returning. Terrified, Yui cries out in desperation, but Tanaka Makoto's expression hardens as he prepares to intervene, his grip tightening on his blade. Just as the black sorcerer prepares to warp Yui Hoshino away, Tanaka Makoto erupts into motion. With a burst of overwhelming speed that shatters the ground beneath him, he closes the distance in an instant, leaving the monster stunned by his sudden acceleration. Tanaka Makoto's high-speed strike misses, as the black sorcerer slips into another dimension just in time. The monster cackles with glee, knowing it is now safe from regular attacks, and can simply watch the chaos unfold. However, Tanaka isn't giving up. He tightens his grip on his sword, his expression one of cold determination. Tanaka Makoto doesn't let the monster's trick intimidate him. Raising his sword high with a fierce and determined expression, he challenges the black sorcerer, questioning if it really thinks it can escape so easily. As he readies his move, a memory from when he was 20 begins to surface. In a flashback to his youth, Tanaka Makoto remembers the grueling training he endured. He reflects on the nature of speed, noting that swinging a blade fast enough hits the sound barrier, and surpassing it creates a sonic boom. Driven by the question of what would happen if he swung even faster, he practiced relentlessly, swinging his sword over and over again, until the blade became invisible, and the sound of it cutting through the air vanished entirely. With a look of absolute determination, Tanaka Makoto recalls the moment his training bore fruit. He unleashes his self-taught sword style, executing a powerful dimensional slash that tears through the fabric of space. The strike hits the black sorcerer with devastating force, shattering the monster's dimensional defense. With a powerful shout, Tanaka Makoto completes his strike. The dimensional slash rips through the black sorcerer's defenses, leaving the monster howling in agony as it is brutally torn apart. The devastating power of the dimensional slash splits the black sorcerer right down the middle, leaving the monster to let out one final piercing shriek of pain. Meanwhile, Tanaka Makoto remains entirely unfazed, his hands steady on his blade as the attack concludes. Tanaka Makoto remains stoic, but the stream chat is in a frenzy. Viewers are distressed to see Yui Hoshino still trapped within the magical sphere, desperately questioning why the spell hasn't been lifted. Some viewers warn that a black sorcerer's magic is relentless and cannot be stopped even by killing the caster, leaving Yui in a precarious and cruel situation. The stream chat is in chaos, with some viewers mocking Tanaka's inability to save the girl, while others plead for him to act. Amidst the noise, the realization hits that time is running out. Yui Hoshino is on the verge of being teleported deep into the dungeon. Tanaka remains focused, desperately searching for the best course of action to prevent the tragedy. Tanaka Makoto suddenly finds a solution. "I got it. This is my best option," he declares with determination. He throws several potions toward Yui Hoshino, shouting, "You can have these." As she catches the item shock, Tanaka urgently warns her, "You'll be fine as long as you make it to the upper level. Move now." The other adventurers are panicked, shouting, and asking what will happen to Tanaka. Unbothered, Tanaka smiles and declares his intention. With a final action, he manifests a powerful magical circle around Yui Hoshino to ensure her safety. As the teleportation magic activates with a loud boom, Tanaka Makoto steps directly into the circle, pulling Yui Hoshino close. Shocked and terrified, Yui screams in panic, realizing that Tanaka is now caught in the spell and will be teleported along with her. Despite the danger, Tanaka remains calm, holding her shoulder and softly reminding her of a promise he once made. Tanaka Makoto looks at Yui Hoshino with a confident smile, declaring that he will never leave her until they both escape the dungeon. Overwhelmed by his kindness, Yui bursts into tears. Meanwhile, the other adventurers watch in awe, thanking him profusely for his bravery and selflessness. A blinding light engulfs Tanaka Makoto as the teleportation magic activates. With a loud zap, he and Yui Hoshino vanish instantly, leaving the remaining adventurers staring at the empty space where they once stood. Tanaka Makoto falls through the darkness, the sudden teleportation whisking him away and plunging him deep into the depths of the dungeon. Tanaka Makoto makes a controlled landing, holding Yui Hoshino securely in his arms to protect her. He gently asks if she is all right, warning her to be careful since it is dark, but he is suddenly caught off guard when Yui clings to him desperately in her panic. Panicking, Tanaka Makoto frantically insists that he didn't mean to hold Yui Hoshino in such an awkward way, begging her not to sue him. Embarrassed, Yui demands to be put down. After regaining their composure, Tanaka looks around the dim environment, questioning if the oppressive darkness is a sign that they are now in the deep levels of the dungeon. Realizing they are in total darkness, Tanaka Makoto pulls out a backup drone that Adachi had prepared for such an emergency. As he activates the device, he reflects on how Adachi is always helping him out and resolves to thank him once they return. With a beep, the drone takes flight and emits a powerful beam of light, instantly brightening the surroundings and catching Yui Hoshino off guard. As the drone's light reveals the stark, rocky corridor around them, Yui Hoshino looks around in wonder, questioning where they are. Tanaka Makoto remains cautious, noting that they seem to have landed in a precarious spot. Suddenly, a series of heavy rumbles shake the ground, signaling an approaching threat. Standing in the middle of a desolate, rocky corridor, Tanaka Makoto realizes that both ends of the passage are shrouded in darkness, leaving them with no way to determine the exit. He sighs internally, admitting that he is clueless about which direction to take, and frustrated that this is a problem he cannot simply solve with his sword. Beside him, Yui Hoshino breaks down in tears, repeatedly apologizing to Tanaka and blaming herself for their current predicament. Tanaka Makoto tells Yui Hoshino not to worry, acknowledging that she took a magic attack to protect other adventurers. He explains that since she usually works solo, she might not be used to relying on others, but he finds her selflessness admirable. Despite Yui's guilt over dragging him into danger, Tanaka remains calm. He observes the high concentration of mana essence around them, confirming they have reached the deep levels, and reassures her that he is well experienced in working in such perilous places. With a confident smile and a thumbs up, Tanaka Makoto tells Yui Hoshino not to worry, claiming that the deep dungeon is basically his workplace. His unwavering confidence manages to soothe Yui's fears. Though she acknowledges that they are in a hopeless situation, she finds herself feeling strangely at ease around the unusual man. Tanaka Makoto notices that Yui Hoshino has regained her composure and suggests they focus on finding an exit. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Yui earnestly declares that she wants to return the favor and is willing to do anything she can, despite having no money. Tanaka internally sighs with relief that the broadcast is off, knowing such a statement would cause a massive stir among his viewers, before calmly steering the conversation back to locating the exit. Tanaka Makoto suddenly stops and checks Yui Hoshino's forehead, noticing she is burning up with a fever. Despite Yui's insistence that she is fine, Tanaka firmly disagrees. He reveals that her symptoms indicate the onset of mana essence poisoning, warning her that moving around in such a condition would be extremely dangerous. Tanaka Makoto explains the dangers of mana essence poisoning, describing it as a condition caused by overexposure to the mana-saturating dungeons that can even be fatal if the body fails to expel the excess. He notes that while wakers have some resistance, the deep levels are far more concentrated than any other. Since Yui Hoshino has never been to the deep levels before, her sudden teleportation left her vulnerable. Realizing the situation, Yu admits she is likely suffering from the poisoning, while Tanaka solemnly adds that there is no known cure other than enduring the sickness until it passes. Yui Hoshino feels guilty, worrying that Tanaka Makoto is stuck in the dungeon because of her illness. However, Tanaka surprises her by claiming there is a way to cure it. After a brief tease, he explains that during his time working for a guild in the deep levels, he suffered from mana essence poisoning frequently and eventually figured out how to overcome it. Yui Hoshino is stunned and desperately begs to know how to be cured. With a confident grin, Tanaka Makoto reveals the secret: a spread of bizarre dungeon ingredients and a cooking pot. Looking at the grotesque food, Yui is left bewildered, wondering what those things even are. With a confident flourish, Tanaka Makoto presents the strange items has collected, explaining that they are ingredients gathered from various dungeons. He enthusiastically promises to prepare a superb mana essence purging dish for Yui Hoshino, leaving her completely stunned and confused. After setting up his device, Tanaka Makoto confirms the stream is live. He addresses his audience calmly, introducing himself and informing the viewers that they are now streaming from deep within the West Shinjuku Precipice dungeon. Tanaka Makoto continues his broadcast, explaining to his audience that the high concentration of mana essence in the deep levels has left Yui Hoshino on the brink of poisoning. While the viewers are relieved to see them safe, they are confused by the stream's title, Tanaka's Homemade Dungeon Cooking Class. When Tanaka asks if any of them have experienced such a condition, the chat responds with an emphatic "of course not." Tanaka Makoto reflects on the severity of mana essence poisoning, recalling a time when he had to fight for his life to escape the deep levels. Since the condition won't heal on its own, he decides to prepare a dish that served as his Goto cure during his days as a corporate slave. As he boils water and chops ingredients, his viewers are bewildered yet entertained, realizing that the stream's title was actually accurate. Tanaka Makoto ignites his stove with a loud whoosh. He explains that it is a mana essence stove, a perfect tool for dungeons because it doesn't require traditional fuel and doesn't consume oxygen, eliminating the risk of suffocation in caves. Watching him prepare the remedy, Yui Hoshino feels the need to be useful and asks if she can help. Tanaka Makoto asks Yui Hoshino if she is sure she wants to help, warning her not to push herself. Eager to be useful, Yui insists, so Tanaka asks her to cut the ingredients into bite-sized pieces. But as soon as Yui looks closer, she is horrified to find that the ingredients are slimy, wiggling creatures. Yui is completely repulsed by the slimy ingredients, shouting in disbelief about what they are. Tanaka calmly informs her that they are drain mushrooms, explaining that they possess the special ability to break down mana essence upon contact. He further clarifies that in small doses they are effective in alleviating the symptoms of mana essence poisoning, while the stream viewers amuse themselves by watching Yui's cute, disgusted reaction. Yui Hoshino is baffled, wondering how Tanaka could possibly know about such an obscure ingredient. Tanaka explains that during his days as a corporate slave he lacked the time and money for proper meals, forcing him to eat whatever he found in the dungeons. He discovered that these mushrooms helped mitigate the effects of mana essence poisoning. While Tanaka thinks the mushrooms aren't that bad tasting, Yui is clearly creeped out by his revelation. Despite her discomfort, she reluctantly agrees to start cutting the mushrooms. Tanaka Makoto continues to list the ingredients, mentioning shout carrots and other herbs that help flush mana essence from the system. As Yui Hoshino nervously helps him chop the strange ingredients if he is the weird one for knowing such things. While stirring the pot, he reminisces about his time as a corporate slave, explaining how he forcibly built up his resistance, explaining the eat maneric foods and then f***ing them out whenever he felt sick. His viewers are left in awe and horror at his insane survival methods. Yui finishes cutting the ingredients and tosses them into the pot as Tanaka instructs. As the soup simmers, Tanaka mentions that he added some meat to the dish. Surprised, Yui asks about the meat, and Tanaka explains it comes from a dungeon boar, a monster whose mana-rich meat can be safely consumed if processed correctly. Tanaka Makoto confidently explains that dungeon boar meat actually has a rich and strong flavor, though few people know it since it's rarely eaten. Meanwhile, Yu Hoshino is completely overwhelmed with dread, her expression one of pure despair. The viewers watch the scene, laughing at her reaction and urging her to stay strong. Tanaka then remembers something and adds, "Oh, by the way," Tanaka Makoto holds up a glowing ingredient, warning that such items are packed with mana essence and should never be eaten. However, as he continues to explain the dangers of mana essence poisoning, he is seen casually munching on the very things he is warning against. Yu Hoshino looks on in disbelief, and the viewers are equally baffled by his complete lack of common sense. Finally, Tanaka adds a pinch of dungeon-gathered salt to the pot, declaring that the soup is cooking nicely. The special mana essence removal soup, made from drain mushrooms, shout carrots, dungeon boar meat, and luminous caps, is finally ready. Tanaka Makoto cheerfully encourages Yu Hoshino to try it. Though she is hesitant and initially finds the taste repulsive, she is suddenly struck by an unexpected reaction. Yu Hoshino bravely takes a sip of the strange-looking soup. Despite her initial apprehension and the viewer's surprise, her expression instantly transforms into one of pure shock and delight, as she realizes that the soup actually tastes good. Yu Hoshino eats the soup with great appetite, feeling her body warm up and her condition improve. Tanaka Makoto is glad to see her recovery, though he warns her to be careful not to drink too much to avoid losing more than necessary. Internally, Tanaka feels a sense of relief, admitting he was nervous about cooking for someone for the first time, but is pleased that the result was a success. After finishing the soup, Yu Hoshino feels completely restored and expresses her gratitude to Tanaka Makoto. Noticing her improved condition, Tanaka tells her to get some rest while he cleans up the area. Although Yui offers to help, Tanaka insists she stay put and relax. Yu Hoshino bows deeply, thanking Tanaka Makoto for his help. As Tanaka begins packing his cooking gear, he reflects on the mana essence removal soup, admitting he was worried it might be too strong and do more harm than good. However, seeing her recovered state, he realizes Yui has a higher mana tolerance than he initially thought. Despite her strength, he notes that her fighting style remains a bit rough, believing that Yu Hoshino could become an incredible adventurer with the right training. Tanaka Makoto asks her if she has ever learned how to fight from anyone. Yui admits that she hasn't, explaining that she only entered dungeons a few times with mixed parties of men and women. Intrigued, Tanaka asks if she is still in touch with those former teammates. Hoshino explains that things became tense after she joined her previous party, eventually leading to her being blamed for the team falling apart, which prompted her to run away. Watching her, Tanaka Makoto quickly deduces the cause. Yui's natural kindness and beauty likely led the men in the party to fawn over her, sparking jealousy in the women. He concludes that Yui's considerate nature simply gave the wrong impression, making her departure the only viable option. Tanaka reflects on the age difference between himself and Yui, concluding that she could never be interested in a burnt-out office worker like him. However, feeling a responsibility as the adult in the situation, he decides to give her some advice to prevent further trouble. He bluntly explains to a bewildered Yui that men are prone to falling for anyone who is kind to them. And for a girl as cute as her, a simple gesture can be a one-hit KO for any man. Yu Hoshino is completely taken aback, her face flushing deep red as she asks in shock if Tanaka Makoto actually thinks she is cute. Confused by her intense reaction, Tanaka simply and honestly admits that he does, leaving Yui even more overwhelmed. Tanaka Makoto continues his blunt honesty, telling Yu Hoshino that few girls are as cute as she is, and admitting that he would have had a crush on her if they were classmates. Overwhelmed by the compliment, Yui's mind drifts into a daydream, imagining a romantic scenario where a classmate confesses his longtime feelings for her. Yu Hoshino reacts explosively to Tanaka's bluntness, leaving him confused and worried about her well-being. Meanwhile, the stream's audience is in a frenzy, teasing the pair and wondering why they aren't dating already. Tanaka, however, remains completely oblivious, dismissing the rowdy comments as just another pointless online argument, while Yui tries to regain her composure. Still reeling from the blunt compliments, Yu Hoshino is completely flustered. With her heart racing, she tentatively wonders if Tanaka Makoto is actually intending to fall for her. Yu Hoshino immediately panics, covering her face in embarrassment after realizing what she just asked. Tanaka Makoto is completely stunned by her words. Meanwhile, the stream chat explodes with excitement, with viewers cheering them on and treating the moment as a romantic confession, as the live stream audience anxiously speculates on whether Tanaka will finally realize Yui's feelings. The man himself proves them right about his denseness. Laughing heartily, Tanaka completely misinterprets the moment, telling Yui she's a funny girl and reminding her that anyone else would have mistaken her kindness for romantic interest. Yu Hoshino can only stammer a clumsy apology, her expression a mix of shock and heartbreak after Tanaka's dense response. Meanwhile, the live chat erupts in chaos. with viewers lamenting the graphic heartbreak and calling out Tanaka for being completely oblivious to her feelings. Tanaka Makoto lets out a sigh of relief internally, thinking he barely escaped falling for Yui Hoshino. Quickly changing the subject, he praises her as a formidable girl and brings up her lack of formal combat training. He tells her that her natural talent is like a rare treasure, and it would be a waste to let it go unused, leaving Yui stunned by the unexpected compliment. Tanaka Makoto explains to Yui Hoshino that she is a pure power-type fighter, possessing raw strength that even surpasses his own. However, he warns her that she won't get far without proper training. To teach her what is lacking, he asks her to swing her sword at him with full force. Shocked, Yui protests that she cannot simply attack him, but Tanaka reassures her to trust him. After a moment of hesitation, Yui reluctantly agrees. With a determined expression, Yui Hoshino declares her trust in Tanaka Makoto, before charging at him with everything she's got. While the stream viewers debate whether Tanaka can handle her raw power, he remains completely calm as she screams, "Here I come," and lunges forward. Yui Hoshino launches her attack with everything she has. But Tanaka Makoto catches the blade with his bare hand, stopping it dead in its tracks. Stunned by his overwhelming power, Yui can only stare in disbelief while the stream chat erupts in excitement over his insane feat. Calmly, Tanaka analyzes her form, telling her that while she is strong, her lack of a stable core is causing her to lose control of her own power. Tanaka Makoto continues his guidance, explaining that Yui Hoshino loses her balance because she puts all her strength into her arms. He tells her that fixing her core will make her significantly stronger. As Yui tries to accept, Tanaka demonstrates the correct form, urging her to keep her posture straight and swing from a solid stance. Tanaka Makoto tells Yui Hoshino that she is getting much better, praising her form as she adjusts her stance. While he outwardly encourages her, he privately admits he doesn't quite understand how she's doing it. He recalls his time as an instructor for other awakened individuals, remembering how they struggled to grasp his explanations, making Yui's immediate understanding all the more remarkable. Tanaka Makoto begins to wonder if he has actually become a better teacher. Yui is amazed at how much better she can control her strength under his guidance. With high energy, Tanaka shouts out intuitive instructions, telling her to plant her feet and channel power from her legs and back, emphasizing that she must swing with her whole body rather than relying solely on her arms. Following Tanaka's intuitive cues, Yui Hoshino focuses her energy. With a sequence of precise movement, swoosh and bang, she swings her sword using her whole body, resulting in a massive explosive impact. The devastating strike leaves a massive gash in the surroundings, leaving Yui and Tanaka in awe. Overjoyed by the result, Yui praises Tanaka's guidance, while Tanaka acknowledges her growth, stating that she can now make full use of her strength. Meanwhile, the stream viewers react with a mix of confusion and amusement at the pair's chemistry. Tanaka Makoto continues his guidance, explaining that a large sword can serve as a shield to block or deflect attacks. Yui Hoshino is surprised by this insight, admitting that using her weapon for defense had never crossed her mind. Once the lesson is complete, Tanaka decides it is time to move, noting that staying in such a cramped space would only make them gloomy. Yui Hoshino hesitantly approaches Tanaka Makoto, asking if he could continue teaching her combat skills in the future as a way to return the favor. Tanaka gives a small smile and agrees, as long as she is okay with him being her teacher. Yui Hoshino beams with joy, thanking Tanaka Makoto enthusiastically for his agreement. Tanaka looks on with a small smile, thinking about how earnest she is in her desire to grow stronger. However, the narrator sighs at Tanaka's lack of awareness, noting that the price of his immense strength is being totally oblivious to Yui's feelings. Tanaka Makoto and Yui Hoshino begin moving forward again, heading deeper into the cavern. Tanaka warns Yui to stay sharp, as deep-level monsters could appear at any moment. As they walk side by side, the stream viewers can't help but tease Tanaka's obliviousness, joking that Hez the real heroine of a dating sim. As they navigate the monotonous corridors of the dungeon, Tanaka Makoto begins to worry that they aren't making any progress toward the exit. His mood shifts instantly when a notification pops up on his screen. A donation of 60,000 yen and a heartfelt message from the adventurers they rescued in the middle level, confirming they are now safe. Overjoyed, Tanaka calls out to Hoshino to show her the message, relieved that their efforts truly paid off. Yui Hoshino is thrilled to hear that the other adventurers made it out safely. Just then, a message from Hiroki arrives, informing them that the Dungeon Management Bureau is organizing a search team to help them. However, a brief memory shows Hiroki in a dire situation, doubting that rescuers reach in time and resolving to find his own way out. Back in the present, as Tanaka Makoto and we continue walking, Tanaka suddenly stops, sensing something unusual about the area. Yui Hoshino looks around in confusion, noticing something familiar. Tanaka Makoto confirms her suspicion, pointing out the glowing mushroom bits they left behind, and a mark Yui had made on the wall. Shocked, Yui exclaims that they had been walking straight the whole time, but Tanaka calmly concludes that they have somehow circled back to where they first started. Tanaka Makoto is completely perplexed, wondering how they could have returned to their starting point when there were no crossroads in sight. As the stream viewers panic and urge him to do something about the infinite loop, Yui Hoshino struggles to keep her fear in check. She reminds herself that in a dungeon, the impossible happens every day, and that losing her composure would only lead to their downfall. Tanaka Makoto reminds Yui Hoshino that every mystery in a dungeon has an explanation if one gathers enough information and thinks it through. He confirms that the mark on the wall is indeed the one she made, but as he examines it closely, he notices a discrepancy. He points out that the mark is shallower than it was originally. Upon touching the wall, he finds it to be slimy, concluding that the mark was definitely deeper before. Tanaka Makoto realizes that the slimy texture he felt is not natural for the luminous cap mushrooms, suggesting that their surfaces are melting, a detail he marks as an important clue. Turning his attention to his companion, he asks Yui Hoshino if something is wrong, noting that she looks tired. Yui admits that she does feel more worn out than usual, despite their slow pace, wondering if it is simply because she is tense. Tanaka Makoto realizes that Yui Hoshino's stamina is being drained without her knowing. By combining the clues, the self-healing walls, the melting mushrooms, and her exhaustion, the puzzle finally clicks into place. Confident in his conclusion, he tells Yui to stay calm as he prepares to explain the reality of their situation. Tanaka Makoto delivers his conclusion with confidence, stating that they are currently inside a monster's belly. Yui Hoshino is completely blindsided by the revelation, panicking at the thought of having been eaten. She tries to rationalize the situation, pointing out that the walls appear to be solid rock, and questioning how being inside a monster explains why they have been walking in circles. Tanaka Makoto further explains the situation, noting that they are likely inside a monster made of rock that can shift its organs to trap prey. He reveals that the black sorcerer must have teleported them directly into the creature's stomach, where digestive fluids have been quietly draining their stamina. Yui Hoshino can only stare in horror, realizing how close they came to being trapped forever. Tanaka Makoto reassures a bewildered Yui Hoshino, explaining that since they know they are inside a monster, they can simply cut their way out, as he draws his sword with absolute confidence. A shocked Yui questions if he can actually do that, to which Tanaka simply replies, of course. Tanaka Makoto tells Yui Hoshino that it's time to get out of there, and a hopeful Yui declares that she's counting on him. With a determined expression, Tanaka grips his sword hilt and prepares to unleash his self-taught sword style to slice through the monster's stomach. With a sudden, powerful strike, Tanaka Makoto unleashes his steel sword, tearing a massive vertical rift through the rock-like walls. As blood splurts from the wound, a shocked Yui Hoshino exclaims in disbelief. Looking at the gore, Tanaka calmly confirms the reality of their situation. They were truly inside a monster. With the opening created, Tanaka Makoto tells Yui Hoshino to hang on tight. He grabs her and leaps decisively through the blood-soaked gap, successfully escaping the monster's belly. With a final powerful strike, Tanaka Makoto bursts through the monster's wall, leaping out into the light while holding Yui Hoshino. They leave the gore and darkness of the stomach behind, but as they land, a series of odd sounds, a click, a drip, and a resonate through the air. Tanaka Makoto and Yui Hoshino soar through the air, surrounded by flying debris and the monster's fluids, before landing firmly on the ground. As he takes in their new environment, Tanaka lets out a short, surprised "oh." With a heavy thud, Tanaka Makoto lands on the ground, shielding Yui Hoshino from the impact. He immediately checks on her, asking if she's okay. Though visibly shaken and dizzy, Yui manages to stammer that she is fine. As they catch their breath, Tanaka looks around at their surroundings, finally seeing the full form of the monster they were trapped inside. Tanaka Makoto and Yui Hoshino stand small before the overwhelming presence of Kian. The massive Kian towers over them, its jagged, rocky body filling their entire field of vision. Yui Hoshino looks up in shock, asking Tanaka Makoto about the identity of the creature. Tanaka calmly identifies it as an Srank mountain dragon, also known as a mountain range dragon. He explains that while land dragons are typically wingless and tough, this particular specimen is an anomaly, measuring nearly 100 meters, in length, essentially a living, moving mountain. Tanaka Makoto contemplates the sheer scale of the creature, noting that he has never seen one this massive and suspects it is an overgrown variant. He realizes that this beast's presence is likely why deep-level monsters have been migrating to the middle and lower levels. As the stream viewers panic, claiming no human could possibly fight such a thing, Tanaka calmly observes that the monster's body is tougher than usual, making a bare-handed fight particularly difficult. The stream viewers are in a panic, screaming for Tanaka to run away and get out of there. worrying about what would happen to Yui Hoshino if he were killed. Tanaka acknowledges that while mountain dragons are slow and escaping would be easy, he cannot simply leave. He explains that the irregularity of the dungeon won't be resolved unless this variant is dealt with, noting that even the government would struggle with such a massive creature, and leaving it alone would only lead to more casualties. Tanaka reflects on the government's first subjugation unit, recalling from his time with the Black Dog Guild how overstretched they are. Thinking of the unit's chief, Amatsuki, and her likely exhaustion, he decides to do her a favor by handling the monster himself. He turns to Yui Hoshino, asking her to wait a little longer before they make their exit. Yui Hoshino eagerly agrees to wait. Tanaka Makoto thanks her, asking for just a minute as he cracks his knuckles, preparing himself to take on the massive mountain dragon. Tanaka Makoto stands small but resolute before the overwhelming presence of the mountain dragon, Kion. As the earth rumbles under the beast's weight, the two lock eyes, the air thick with tension before the inevitable clash. With a thunderous roar, Kion strikes, sending a colossal wave of rock and debris crashing down upon Tanaka Makoto. The viewers watch in absolute shock, convinced that the attack is a full-on disaster and that Tanaka is completely done for. While the viewers feared the worst, Tanaka Makoto remains completely unfazed. With a simple huff, he halts the colossal landslide with his bare hand, effortlessly neutralizing Kion's devastating assault. Kion lets out a confused roar, unable to comprehend how its overwhelming assault was neutralized. Standing unfazed, Tanaka Makoto supports the entire mass of falling rocks with one hand, calmly remarking that the attack is quite heavy. The viewers are losing their minds, unable to believe that Tanaka is stopping a moving mountain with his bare hands. They call his strength creepy and label him a physical monster, wondering if the stream is glitching. Amidst the chaos of the chat, Yui Hoshino watches the scene, her face flushing red as she falls for him all over again. With a powerful grip, Tanaka Makoto seizes the colossal mass of stone. With a loud heave-a-ho, he effortlessly flings the mountain-sized attack upward, showcasing his monstrous physical strength. With a thunderous shout, Tanaka Makoto hurls the massive mountain of rock high into the air, sending debris flying everywhere. Yui Hoshino can only watch in utter disbelief, her eyes wide as she witnesses the sheer scale of his inhuman strength. The mountain of rock hurls back down with a thunderous crash, erupting into a massive cloud of debris. Tanaka Makoto stands calmly before the devastation, while Yui Hoshino can only stare in disbelief, exclaiming in shock at the overwhelming power on display. Standing amidst the ruins of the explosion, Tanaka Makoto looks back at the Kion, noting that the attack wasn't enough to hurt him. Kion lets out a frustrated growl, while Tanaka calmly raises his hand, inviting the monster to come at him. Realizing it's already past 5, Tanaka Makoto decides to wrap up the fight quickly to avoid the dread of working overtime. But just as he thinks of his schedule, a sudden blinding light erupts from the rubble, leaving him completely stunned. The blinding light suddenly detonates with immense force, sending a shockwave that rips through the earth. Yui Hoshino is thrown back by the impact, while Tanaka Makoto is forced to brace himself against the overwhelming surge of energy erupting from the debris. A towering column of energy and smoke erupts toward the sky, carving a deep, jagged crater into the earth. At the very bottom of this immense void, Tanaka Makoto stands alone, dwarfed by the sheer scale of the destruction. As the smoke clears, Yui Hoshino looks on in disbelief at the devastation, wondering if Tanaka Makoto is alright. Tanaka calmly confirms he is fine, barely registering the intensic was powerful enough to melt the sturdy dungeon walls. Tanaka only thinks to himself that the sturdy dungeon walls. Meanwhile, the live chat erupts, with viewers joking about his terrifying durability and suggesting he could probably bathe in lava. Tanaka Makoto observes the massive creature, noting that mountain dragons aren't typically capable of shooting heat beams. He realizes this special variant is a grave threat. If the dungeon's internal balance collapses further, it could trigger a catastrophist to swarm the surface. Recalling news of a small country being wiped out by such an event, Tanaka determines that he must bring the monster down quickly to ensure such a tragedy never happens in Japan. A sudden tremor shakes the ground, and Tanaka Makoto is caught off guard as a blinding light cracks through the stone. With a thunderous boom, Kion bursts forth from the debris, launching a fierce counterattack. Kion lets out a thunderous roar as it fully reveals its colossal, rocky form. The sheer force of its emergence sends a violent shockwave through the area, forcing Tanaka Makoto to brace himself against the sudden blast of energy and debris. The stream chat explodes with reactions as the screen shakes violently, with viewers joking about the immersive experience while others express genuine fear. Some viewers even report feeling the tremors in Shinjuku, realizing the catastrophic scale of the event. Despite the overwhelming size of the monster and the doubts of the audience, Tanaka Makoto's gaze remains sharp and unwavering. Realizing that the tremors are reaching the surface, Tanaka Makoto grows concerned that innocent people might get hurt if the battle continues. Facing the mountain-sized Kion, he prepares himself to put an end to the threat once and for all. Kion lets out a deafening roar, shaking the very foundations of the dungeon. Unfazed, Tanaka Makoto plants his feet firmly and enters a combat stance, preparing to unleash his self-taught sword style to put an end to the monster's rampage. With a sudden burst of speed, Tanaka Makoto launches himself toward the massive Kion. He unleashes his devastating flash slash, cutting through the air and the monster's rocky hide in a single blinding strike. The flash slash connects with devastating precision. Kion lets out a confused cry as massive fissures rip through its rocky body. Tanaka Makoto leaps back, watching as the colossal monster completely disintegrates into a rain of debris. With Kion crumbling into pieces and letting out one last thunderous roar, Tanaka Makoto calmly decides to wrap things up, though he is momentarily distracted by dust getting in his eyes. On the side, the stream chat is in a complete frenzy. Viewers are stunned by the speed of the attack, and the broadcast goes viral globally, drawing in millions of people who are amazed by the strength of the man they call Corsword. With a final thunderous boom, the battle reaches its climax. Tanaka Makoto stands unfazed amidst the falling debris as the massive form of Kion completely shatters, crumbling into a mountain of stone. Tanaka Makoto is surprised to discover that Kion can restore its body using fallen rocks. Realizing this ability is exactly how the monster grew so colossal. As the massive stone beast rumbles back to life before him, Tanaka grips his sword, unfazed and determined to stick to his plan. Tanaka Makoto looks at the massive Kion with a cold, determined gaze. He tells Kion that its regeneration has limits and vows to keep slashing it as long as it continues to recover. Tanaka Makoto stands calmly before the colossal Kion, whose massive stone body is now shaking with fear. As the monster lets out a low growl, the stream chat erupts, with viewers laughing at the mountain dragon's terror and urging Tanaka to finish the battle once and for all. Kion lets out a deafening roar that shakes the very ground. Despite the monster's overwhelming size and aggression, Tanaka Makoto stands firm and resolute, ready to end the battle once and for all. Tanaka Makoto narrows his eyes, observing the situation with cold precision. "So you're all working together, huh?" he remarks. Suddenly, a horde of black sorcerers appears, letting out piercing, dissonant shrieks as they coordinate their assault against him. A girl with animal ears looks on in shock, realizing the sheer number of sorcerers present. She deduces that the black sorcerers and the mountain dragon have a symbiotic pact. The dragon provides a secure sanctuary, while the mages deliver captured prey directly into its stomach. She notes the presence of red, black, and yellow sorcerers, as well as a white priest, fearing that this coordinated tag team is an unbeatable force. Facing a group of srank black sorcerers, Tanaka Makoto finds the situation more of a nuisance than a threat. With a cold, determined gaze, he declares his intent to finish them off quickly. Meanwhile, the viewers are captivated, joking that his years of grueling corporate overtime have forged him into a truly terrifying warrior. As the black sorcerer lets out a piercing shriek and unleashes intense flames, Tanaka Makoto remains calm, carefully analyzing the attack. He notes that while the fire is hot enough to melt iron, it doesn't emit heat from the staff's tip because it is wrapped in a layer of magical energy. Realizing that a sorcerer-type monster's true body is its robe, Tanaka identifies a critical weakness. They are naturally vulnerable to fire. Realizing that he can safely approach as long as the monster isn't actively firing its flames, Tanaka Makoto vanishes in a blur of speed. "Pardon the intrusion," he remarks calmly as he closes the gap. Before the black sorcerer can even react, Tanaka unleashes a flurry of precise slashes, leaving the monster screaming in shock. With a final, decisive movement, Tanaka Makoto shatters the black sorcerer's staff, leaving the monster screaming in shock and pain. As the impact clears, Tanaka lands lightly on his feet, remaining completely composed after the devastating assault. A colossal explosion erupts, engulfing the area in smoke and debris as the black sorcerer is utterly destroyed by the sheer force of Tanaka Makoto's attack. The devastating blast echoes through the area, leaving one of the black sorcerers screaming in agony as they are obliterated. The remaining sorcerers watch in stunned silence, unable to comprehend how their comrade was defeated so instantaneously. Without missing a beat, Tanaka Makoto lunges toward the remaining enemies. The black sorcerers are left in shock and terror as he unleashes a flurry of lightning-fast slashes, overwhelming them with sheer speed and precision. Tanaka Makoto exhales a long breath, looking exhausted yet indifferent after the fight. As he stands amidst the rubble, the live chat explodes with comments, with viewers joking that he handled the Srank monsters like an assembly line. Even the mountain dragon looks on in complete disbelief at the ease of the victory. With the black sorcerers gone, Tanaka Makoto stands calmly amidst the wreckage. He looks toward the last enemy, thinking that there is only one more target left to deal with before he can finally clock out. Tanaka Makoto is suddenly startled as the mountain dragon lunges toward him with unexpected speed. "Hey!" he shouts, his composure breaking as he is caught completely off guard by the beast's sudden aggression. The mountain dragon turns and bolts, attempting to flee the battle. While the viewers initially find the sight amusing, they quickly realize the creature is heading straight toward Yui Hoshino. Panicked, the chat screams for Tanaka Makoto to hurry, and he immediately dashes forward with incredible speed to intercept the monster. Yui Hoshino looks up in sheer terror as the massive mountain dragon towers over her, letting out a menacing roar. Tanaka Makoto realizes the mountain dragon is trying to take someone down and worries that Hoshino won't be able to handle the monster. As he sprints desperately toward her, stream viewers panic, urging Yu to run and calling for Courseworld to hurry. Suddenly, Lumi leaps in with a loud bam, blocking the attack and leaving Tanaka completely bewildered. Tanaka Makoto knows that Yui Hoshino isn't experienced enough to take on a mountain dragon and feels he should intervene, however. Seeing the unwavering determination in her eyes, he realizes she has made up her mind. He shouts out to her with urgency, urging Yui to give the battle everything she's got. With a determined and excited expression, Yui Hoshino responds to Tanaka's call. She charges forward, facing the massive, gaping maw of the mountain dragon, ready to give the battle everything she has. While the stream chat erupts in confusion and fear over Tanaka Makoto's choice to let you fight, Tanaka remains calm, guiding her through the mechanics of a powerful strike, using strange onomatopoeias. Yui concentrates intensely, following his advice to plant her feet and drive her power upward, causing the earth beneath her to crack as she readies her blow. Tanaka Makoto reflects on Yui Hoshino's potential, noting that her only weaknesses were experience and knowledge. Confident that the instructions he just gave her will bridge that gap, he admits that her raw physical talent is even greater than his own. Now fully empowered and focused, Yui grips her sword tightly, ready to unleash a devastating swing. With a thunderous crash, Yui Hoshino unleashes her full power, her blade colliding with the mountain dragon in a violent explosion of stone. The sheer force of the impact shatters the creature's rocky exterior, sending shards flying in every direction. Tanaka Makoto watches from the side, completely awestruck by the raw strength Yui has displayed. The mountain dragon staggers back, completely overwhelmed by the sheer force of the blow. On the stream, the viewers are losing their minds, stunned that Yui Hoshino could actually push the beast back. They begin to hype her up as a monstrous warrior, with comments flooding in about her and Tanaka Makoto being a superhuman strength couple. With the mountain dragon staggered and roaring in pain, Tanaka Makoto takes his position atop the shattered debris. Maintaining his corporate mindset even in the heat of battle, he decides it's time to wrap things up and finish the fight. With a single overwhelming strike, Tanaka Makoto employs his self-taught sword style. He unleashes the Mount Fuji splitting slash, a powerful blow that cleans in through the massive body of the mountain dragon. The devastating power of the Mount Fuji splitting slash takes its toll. With a thunderous crash, the mountain dragon is sliced clean through, its massive rocky form splitting apart as it lets out a confused final groan. The sheer power of the attack is absolute. The mountain dragon's massive form cannot hold together, shattering into a million pieces as it is completely obliterated. With the battle over and the monster reduced to rubble, Tanaka Makoto glances at his watch. Noting it is 5:27 p.m. exhausted, he declares that he is clocking out, relieved that he might actually get some sleep tonight.